Welcome to TheGrill 2021, presented by WrapPRO, our community of entertainment insiders. I'm Sharon Waxman, the founder and the editor-in-chief of TheWrap, and TheGrill is where we explore the prevailing changes and challenges and opportunities in entertainment and media. This is our 12th year of doing this, and we are really excited to have this vital conversation again. After a year and a half of a global pandemic, we are smarter than we were a year ago about where the industry is headed. But there really is a lot that is still continuing to shift, and we're far from solid ground. We are seeing the results of wave after wave of consolidation at the top of entertainment, from Viacom and CBS re-merging to Discovery and Warner Brothers coming together, Amazon buying MGM. It's an industry with fewer, bigger giants. Is there still more to come? We are also seeing public markets get involved in entertainment companies, and Endeavor has gone public, for example, and these new special purpose acquisition companies, SPACs, have taken center stage. They're sniffing at the edges of LeBron James's Spring Hill. They're looking at Brian Grazer and Ron Howard's Imagine Entertainment. And so content is king again. Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine, sold at a reported $900 million valuation. BuzzFeed is on the SPAC market at a reported $1 billion valuation, and producers continue to make 7- and 8-figure development deals. And why? Because streaming on Netflix, on Hulu, on HBO Max, on Disney Plus, on Peacock, on whatever CBS is calling its services this week, and on a broad array of specialized streaming services as well. So while the box office is down 70% from 2019, the number of households that pay for 4 or more subscriptions has doubled in the past year, according to a study that we wrote about in June. So consumers now pay for an average of 5 subscriptions, up from 3 before the pandemic, according to a Deloitte study. Worldwide viewing time grew 44% in the last 3 months of 2020 compared with the same period a year before. So while the entertainment industry is changing, it's also thriving. And nobody is thriving more than gaming, which is going to rake in something like $175 billion this year. So we have 2 full days ahead of us to talk about these topics, along with many others, including innovation in marketing, the disruption in media by social platforms, a producers roundtable to explain how they're dealing post-COVID, or even if it even is post-COVID. And we will also, as always, explore the state of diversity and inclusion in Hollywood. Today, I'm really excited to kick off the conversation with the new LA Times executive editor, Kevin Merida, and Casey Wasserman, the founder of Wasserman, the talent agency, talking about the state of the industry and beyond. So that will set the stage for our conversations to follow. That's going to be followed by our keynote interview with Scott Stuber, the head of global film at Netflix. After that, we have what promises to be a riveting conversation about the future of record labels, featuring top music executives, and we're also going to have a performance for you. We're also going to focus on diversity in gaming and whether progress is being achieved there. And then we'll have a second roundtable that will feature leading producers in the industry who are dealing with the challenges of creating entertainment during COVID. And so that's day 1. You can participate as well, and we encourage you to do so on our Grill Slack channel. If you've registered for the conference, you received information about how to join the conversations going on there. Check your email. If you haven't yet registered for the conference and you'd like to do so, just go to WrapPRO and it'll lead you on the easy steps to do that. I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Without you guys, we could not put this conference on. So my really sincere thanks to Gerber Kawasaki, Known, City National Bank, Loeb & Loeb, Take-Two Interactive, the RIAA, Sony, Warner Media, Audible, Pantea, IMAX, and Lionsgate. Thank you so much. And finally, my personal thanks to our amazing staff at TheWrap and WrapPRO, who put together a fascinating program and are working so hard behind the scenes to make sure that you have a fantastic experience. If you have any questions or you need assistance or you're lost during the grill, feel free to reach out to our help desk by email, thegrill@thewrap.com, or at the hashtag #grillhelpdesk on Slack. And now onward to the grill. Hi everyone, and welcome to the opening discussion of TheGrill 2021, the state of the industry and beyond. We thought it would be useful to frame the next 2 packed days of conversation with 2 people who are deeply engaged in the profound changes happening in entertainment and media: Casey Wasserman, the chairman and CEO of Wasserman, and Kevin Merida, the executive editor of the LA Times. I'm excited to be sitting here live and in real life with Casey and Kevin in Los Angeles. Casey is the founder and CEO of Wasserman, a leading sports marketing and talent management company based here in Los Angeles, representing players across all corners of sports, from basketball to soccer to golf and beyond. In April of this year, he added Wasserman Music to the agency in acquiring the assets of Paradigm's live music business. Last year, Casey launched CrowdAmp, a pandemic-friendly product connecting fans virtually with live sporting events. He is also the chairman of LA 28, the nonprofit responsible for the successful bid to bring the Olympic and Paralympic Games to Los Angeles in 2028. Kevin took the reins of the Los Angeles Times as executive editor in June, stepping up to one of the biggest challenges in news west of the Mississippi. The paper is the largest newsroom in the West and the most decorated one. But in the past 2 decades, it has had a series of owners, a series of newsroom leaders, and a series of deep institutional challenges, both economic and cultural. Kevin came to the LA Times from running The Undefeated at ESPN, devoted to covering diversity and cultural issues through sports. And before that, he was a top Washington Post editor and writer, where I was fortunate enough to cross paths with him. He also found time to write the book Supreme Discomfort: The Divided Soul of Clarence Thomas. In taking this new position at the LA Times, he packed up his life in Washington, D.C. during a global pandemic, no less, to transform a 139-year-old newspaper into a digital powerhouse for years to come. Welcome, Kevin and Casey. So my first question is, how is entertainment and media doing? Live entertainment is shaky. Theatrical movie business is shaky. Last year, we lost 90,000 jobs in entertainment and media to the pandemic. Some of them have come back, not all. But that was about $74 billion to the economy of this state. So I'd love to hear from each of you, whoever can go first. How are you feeling about entertainment and media right now?
I guess the story is still being told in different regards. If I start with the sports industry, sports has had a unique ability to be able to play their events in a fanless environment. Most of sports is consumed on television, and so they were able to produce their product, not obviously in full capacity venues or any capacity venues last year, but enough to keep the machine moving, if you will, so to keep the industry of sports going, because the TV revenue, people watched, they could have their games, and they would really survive a season and a half.
Because TV revenue is greater than ticket revenue.
Because it's the only piece of the media business where there's such a preponderance of media revenue as well as ticket revenue. It's not solely dependent, and so if you compare it to a live business like music, a concert with no people in it is not a concert, and there's no money from broadcast. And if you compare it to things that require production, given the restrictions that were in place, you couldn't produce a lot of stuff that was just for television, so there was not a lot of stuff for television. And sports kind of sits in this interesting middle, which is obviously everything is better with fans, as we've seen this year. But it could present its product well enough to keep it on TV, to keep people engaged. And I think that's what you saw last year. The music business obviously was decimated. It's coming back. I think you're now starting to see what I think will be somewhat of a new normal for a period of time, which is vaccine mandates and testing protocols for all live events. Obviously, certain states have done that. I think it's going to be much more prevalent.
And I presume you're a fan of that idea.
Look, I'm a fan of anything that gets fans back in stadiums and venues and artists in the music space and artists performing and earning their living doing their craft. So if that's what it takes, I'm all for it. And then, obviously the entertainment business has been totally changed. Habits, windows, consumption, interest, all those things have changed. And it'll be interesting to see which of those changes are permanent and which of those changes are temporary, or as always, does the pendulum usually swing too far either way and end up usually in the middle? And I think that's...
We talked about this last year at TheGrill because a lot of those changes had already manifested themselves, and a lot of those changes were waiting in the wings.
I definitely think for things like distribution windows, whatever it used to be is over. Whatever the new normal is, not sure, but it's going to be radically different than what it was. I agree.
Kevin, what's your overall thought on this?
I mean, I guess my overall thought is that, the pandemic's altered all of our lives, right? And I think that's really the macro picture of it, And I don't care what industry you're in. Entertainment's no different. They've had to strategize and figure out how to get their products to the consumers who want them. And even during this period, some really great things are on streaming. There's some fantastic shows that happen. I was at the Walt Disney Company when they did put Hamilton on, the first time, a big Broadway musicals on streaming. Is very successful, different look. A lot of things that happen. And so I think just being resourceful and nimble, which the culture calls for, we're still, I look at it like we're still in whatever leg of the digital revolution we're in, and this is just another roadblock boulder thrown into it to figure out. My son's an actor, he's down, he talks about it a lot. He's now shooting a series in Baltimore in real life. He's working.
It's okay, you can give him a shout out. There's lots of agents watching.
Daryl Britt Gibson, and he got a start at The Wire, so they got the Wire crew together again. So so he's working, which of course I'm happy about that. And I think, as Casey said, that we're seeing more people working, and we're seeing fans in real life at stadiums, and I think that's making people feel good.
So you guys sound more optimistic than I would have thought, partly from the fact that you, Casey, launched a live entertainment and music part of your business. Obviously, Paradigm was in dire straits, and that was an opportunity. But what made you decide to move into that space?
To be fair, the pandemic didn't make us decide we want to be in the music business. It's something we had tried to do for a long time, and obviously that requires the right opportunity at the right time. Paradigm had built a great music business with incredible agents and incredible artists that they represent, and the timing worked out for us to be able to acquire that business. And that was a decision because we believe what matters in the world is what's live, and what matters live is sports and music. And so we have a company that is fully developed around those kind of areas and that thesis. And the pandemic was just an opportunity, right? I didn't buy this music business to be in it for a year. My approach is I'm going to be in this business forever, and I believe that live music is going to be more and more important forever. And so to be able to be in that business in a thoughtful way with great people, we'll do that every day of the week. And obviously we have a company that's more than capable of, if the pandemic lasted 5 years, we're fine. And so we were able to make that commitment and invest in that opportunity, and to support the employees who are now Wasserman Music employees, and to serve the artists we represent, because we believe in the long-term value of that business. And that's not about what day is the pandemic ending. That believes in just a very strong belief in the power of live music.
So you have a whole lot of highly paid agents in your employ who can't do a whole lot of work?
Well, I would say, rough numbers, it's probably between 30 and 50% of normal. So it's not zero. Last year was probably zero. We didn't own the business last year, but rough, maybe not fully zero, because there was a little bit at the beginning of 2020. This year's maybe 30 to 50%, depending on timing, because obviously timing of a calendar year is very different than tours and stuff. And our anticipation is over the next couple of years, you're frankly bigger than it was pre-pandemic. And so, again, when you are building a company that's about stability over a long period of time, those things aren't as important as being in business with the right people and doing great work for the clients we represent.
So how do you feel about the agency business overall? WME successfully IPO'd. There's still a lot of talk around Endeavor and how it's doing.
Look, I mean, different people have to make different capital decisions for what's right for their business. We have a very strong, stable business with an incredibly strong balance sheet, and shareholders, including myself, who are in this forever. And so whether or not going public is right for us today, probably not, because of the way we are structured and built. That doesn't mean it may not be right at a later date. As long as we can do the work we need to do for the clients we serve and compete, I think we'll look a lot like we do today from a capital structure. But again, that can change. I mean, and I give Endeavor credit. They thought that they needed to diversify their business, so they bought things like the UFC, and that created a capital structure that probably required them to go public, in not in a bad way, in a good way. And so if we did something like that, maybe we'd do that too. But given what we do today and our trajectory in the near term, we're very comfortable doing what we do the way we do it.
Well, I think they diversified out of representation and into events as well. That does not interest you?
It's not whether it interests me or not. It's whether, again, there's lots of good ideas. That doesn't mean it's the right time to do them or the right way to do them. And so for us, and we weren't looking at that opportunity, so I'm not judging that one, but I'm just in general. But look, the ownership of intellectual property is obviously a great value creator. But we love the service industry we are in, which is representing talent and brands. We have built I think a really diversified, interesting business. I think it allows us to see a lot of other opportunities. And in that opportunity set, I'm sure there will be things for us to acquire that look a lot more like intellectual property than looks like a service business.
Kevin, so the owner of the LA Times, Patrick Soon-Shiong, came to TheGrill in 2018. He shared his vision for the paper. It was very inspirational. I was very encouraged by what he had to say. But since that time, the Times has continued to have some struggles. And I would say that for many, you are the great hope of the newspaper. What is the biggest challenge you are facing at the LA Times right now?
Well, there are a lot of challenges, right? I mean, as you say, in the newspaper business, but I think we have to redefine it, what that means. And for me, the challenge first is just getting, the motivation, getting people excited. I think culture and who you work with every day is important. You want people to feel great about their work. I want to get all of the ideas of all of the talent to make use of 100% of the talent we have. And so part of it is just building excitement and trying new things. So the challenge is really, how do you go after a new audience, an audience that is grown up digitally, because that's the future right now of all of us, and people who don't have the habit that I grew up with, and I'm sure Casey did, of a beautifully curated, and I know you did, Sharon, a beautifully curated paper that human beings do every single day that drops on your doorstep, and it's fantastic, it's a marvel. But now there's so many ways to reach people, and you can reach them through music. You can throw your journalism and create digital shows with stars. You can have podcasts. We're experimenting a lot with audio. When I was at the Undefeated, we did music videos. We did 2 best-selling children's books. There are lots of ways to reach audience, and I think having this ecosystem, tapping into the ecosystem of content creation and building your journalism around it and keeping the foundational strength of your journalism, which we have some of the greatest journalists in the world, but expanding that how to do that and bring that together is a big challenge. But if we do that, then I think we'll be successful.
Casey, you grew up, no doubt, reading the LA Times. You may have a deeper well of knowledge of the paper than actually Kevin does. What advice as a reader or as a customer do you have for him?
I think what made the LA Times great was it was an integrated part of this community. And when the ownership shifted away from the Chandlers, it lost that. And I would say that LA is a town that, as you will learn, and that is unique in that the size of the city to essentially have one newspaper, it has to be part of the fabric of the community. And I'm not saying that should alter how it covers the community, but it has to be a part of the community. And I think that's something that was lost, and it's what made the paper special, and what made people care, I think, in a lot of ways. And I'm not talking just in the obvious ways, but the philanthropic efforts of the Chandlers. There was so much that happened in this community because and from the LA Times existence. And I think the papers have lost a little bit of that local connection given the ownership, as you mentioned before, over the last 20 years. And so hopefully with Patrick, who's obviously local, and Kevin, that can be a part of its sort of rebirth.
Yeah, look, I agree with that 100%. I've always been thought of newspapers have to be both certainly journalism with a lens on everything, but they have to be part of the civic fabric of a place. You know, it's a civic institution as well. You know, it ought to be part of communities. It ought to help explain and reveal the place to the people who live it. It ought to be a place where you can bring people together who wouldn't otherwise get together. And I think the Soonshawns have a lot of ideas about that. We have a big campus, doing events, going to other places and doing events, supporting other people's projects. It's certainly something that I want to do. I think it's part of journalism, really, you know, to go to the places and explain yourself, to show up once we get into a safer environment, but to do more things in communities. And so it's going to make our journalism stronger, and it's going to make people see us who may not have given us a look before.
Are there any examples of any events that you have in mind?
You know, sometimes there are people in different quadrants of the community. You could house, you bring a collection of photographs from the LA Times and bring people to see them who wouldn't ordinarily do curated, you know, dinners and events. I've talked about block parties. Go to a place, go to a place and host something. You know, show up. Events with journalists that you don't see. There's a lot of disconnect between journalists and some people who don't have a relationship with journalism. They haven't been interviewed. They haven't grown up with you. So you have to sometimes break that down. And sometimes the best way to do is to be visible. So I think there are a lot of things you can do. We could sponsor a mural series. One of the things I said, murals, a lot of great artists here. Support a lot of artists. Go around in different neighborhoods and create murals in places that may not have gotten that traction. Tag at LA Times. You know, we want to be associated with you. So I just think there are a lot of things to do. You be creative to make that connection rich.
That's cool. Casey, you had some thoughts about how important sports journalism is to you. What are your thoughts about the LA Times' very distinctive voice in covering sports?
I mean, I grew up in LA. I grew up every day reading. My grandmother said, I don't care what section, so I'm surprised I picked the sports section, but I don't care what section you read, you have to read one section of the LA Times every day and tell me about it.
Really?
Yep. And okay, 99.9% of the times it was sports section, but you know, from Jim Murray and Alan Malamud and TJ Simers and Plaschke and just this incredible history of writers. I mean, I don't think there's you can correct me, I'm not sure that there's a sports section in the country that has more Pulitzers than the LA Times. So, and to date all of us, pre-internet, it was the only way you could see the final scores of West Coast games was to wake up in the morning and look at the LA Times, because the East Coast papers closed their editions before the West Coast games were over. Right. And so it had this sort of an inherent advantage for information. And so look, I think, you know, LA is an incredible sports town. We've got as many sports teams in Southern California as any place on earth. The business of sports is really significant. The next 10 years in LA are going to be sort of the most incredible sports run in maybe in any city's history. And, you know, it's one of the things that has distinguished the LA Times and hope continues to be. Obviously, its owner owns a piece of the Lakers and is passionate about sport. Obviously, the new editor has a deep sports background and history. So I just hope that it bodes well for, I care about the LA Times. I care about this community. I care about the LA Times, and I'm passionate about sports. So I'm a big cheerleader of Kevin and what he's going to do. Look,
sports is one of there are a lot of things that divide us. You know, from healthcare to politics, but sports is one thing.
The White Lotus divides us.
The White Lotus divides us. But sports is one thing that brings people together because they cheer for teams in your community, and regardless of whether you Republican or Democrat, or you grew up rural or in the city. Rich or poor, people have that connection, and it's a great advantage. You know, it's something that pulls people together, and it's also just every kind of story you can tell through the lens of sports. You know, I know that from my time at ESPN and building the Undefeated, but it's also just it's a lot of great advantage, and we have a tremendous sports staff at the LA Times that we'll continue to build.
So let's stick with sports for a minute. Casey, you're chair of LA 28. In fact, I just realized that you are basically in charge of the Olympics in LA. What is that like for you?
It is. Well, I joked that, so Mayor Garcetti asked me in 2014 to lead the bid, and I only make two jokes about that. One, if the mayor of your city calls and asks you to do something for nothing, you probably should just hang up the phone, because I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. And secondly, I didn't know I was signing up for a 14-year volunteer job. But truthfully, kidding aside, I love the city. I was born and raised in the city. I'm raising my family in the city. And I think this is a city built, first of all, it's a city built on tourism. LA is built on people coming here to do things, whether that's Disneyland and Universal, or the Academy Awards and the Grammys and the Emmys, or it's the Super Bowl, or it's Laker games. I mean, this is what we do here. And so to have the biggest event on earth in one of the 10 great cities on earth at a time certain.
I'm sorry, it's the biggest event on earth. Fact check.
The Olympics is the biggest event on earth by any measure. We will sell plus or minus 12 million tickets in 30 days. That's 4 seasons of Dodger baseball in 30 days. 10,500 athletes in one city. So World Cup's big event in America will be in 10 cities.
Kevin, you're going to need some more reporters.
We'll have it covered.
There'll be, for opening ceremonies, there'll be plus or minus 150 heads of state, including the President of the United States. You'll have 70,000 fans at SoFi. You'll have the Olympic torch coming through LA, all before you've had a competition.
So, Casey, apart from your passion for the city, what do you actually know about organizing the largest event in the world?
I know how to build great teams and hire great talent. And so I think we're putting together a world-class team to deliver, to use a pun, a games-changing games. We are going to change people's perspective on how, what, and the results of hosting Olympic Games. We are a private enterprise, so we are not a city agency. We don't get any money from the city. We don't get any money from the state. We don't get any money to subsidize what we're doing. We are making the largest investment in LA pre-delivering the games.
Can I pause here for a second? The New York Times did a major takeout on this question, suggesting that perhaps the Olympics should just go away, that the Olympic International Committee is corrupt beyond saving.
Look, here's the thing. It's funny. I know it's easy to say that. By the way, just for the record, the last organizing committee that got indicted for cheating was the Salt Lake Olympic Committee, not the International Olympic Committee. The U.S. bid for the Winter Games.
Is that supposed to make me feel better?
No, but that's not the IOC. The IOC is this organization of 100 people who just vote on games. That's literally all they do, for the most part. So the corrupt thing is ridiculous because I've lived it and I've seen it. There is no, when it comes to bidding, and in my experience, no corruption. People get upset because they think all these cities spend this money because the IOC tells them. Well, I can tell you, amongst all the people, probably including maybe the person who even wrote that article, I've actually read the host city contract. And it says very simply, your responsibility is to deliver the games on a date certain. It doesn't say you have to build a new stadium. It doesn't say you have to build housing. It doesn't say any of those things. Where the Olympics went wrong, and by the way, in part because of the financial success of 1984, is that cities bid on the Olympic Games to drive an urban agenda. The Olympics started out as a social justice exercise. The original creation of the Olympics was to have a common set of rules, to have everybody literally put down their swords and compete together in peace. So the Olympics in '84, we were building 0 new venues. 0. Where's your Olympic Village? It's the dorms at UCLA. Where's your Olympic Stadium? Well, we've got 2, SoFi and the Coliseum. Where's your arena? Well, we've got Staples Center and now the new Bomber Intuit Dome in Inglewood. We've got the Rose Bowl. We've got Dodger Stadium. We've got USC and UCLA's facilities. We've got the beach in Santa Monica. We've got Home Depot Center. We've got the beachfront in Long Beach. We could host the Olympic Games tomorrow. We're not building a venue. So when people say they want to get rid of the Olympic Games, it's because I believe they don't understand what it means to host the Olympic Games. The government of Japan and the prefecture of Tokyo chose to build all that stuff because of the Olympic Games. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. And in LA, we're choosing to do something very different.
Well, I'm not an expert on this topic, so I think you just out-argued me, but I do think it's going to be a very interesting enterprise.
We hope so.
One of the things we talk about every year at TheGrill is diversity and inclusion and how the industry is doing in that regard. Kevin, there's almost, as you know, no doubt, there are almost no people of color running major newspapers. Certainly, it's not 50-50 when it comes to women, and this industry, entertainment, is still struggling in the wake of the Me Too movement to make real gains. So first, Kevin, let me ask you, how are you addressing this?
Yeah, I'm thinking we're just going to do it. You know, I mean, I've been involved in this all my career. It's how I got into it. So I'm not late to this, right? You know, I'm not here after the reckoning in America and studying it now and trying to do stuff. This has literally been part of my focus at every place I've been in my entire career. So from a value standpoint, I think you have to elevate, in a lot of other places though, you have to elevate it as a value. And I think part of, you have a lot of well-meaning people in media, but the change doesn't happen because it's not a big enough value. It doesn't climb to the top of the value tree. And so here it's core. I'm an executive editor. It's high on my value list. It's at the top. And so we have to have and this goes into the leadership ranks. We got to do better. Certainly with Latino journalists, I'll just call that out at the LA Times, which we will in leadership ranks. But we're going to keep making progress and hires, and I'm looking at other people to do that in other parts of the industry, because a lot of companies, media, sports, otherwise, and they have a lot of people that are, you know, in front of cameras and writing stories and doing things, but not people running the things. And so it's striking how stark that is when you really look at it. There have been some great change that's happened lately in heads of ABC News, black women, MSNBC, ABC. There've been some newspaper hires, right, in Texas. Several, you know, people of color have taken the helm of newspapers in Texas. So,
including one of your guys?
And also, yeah, Sewell Chan just started in the nonprofit Texas Tribune, you know, which is good. So there's just, there is some change happening, but it needs to be accelerated.
Do you have any kind of specific metrics in the newsroom that you're looking to commit to?
There are some that they, before I got here, you know, there were some goals that the Soon-Shillings, you know, laid out and agreed to, and there was a lot of discussion that predated me, but I don't have those numbers and percentages right off the top of my head, but we'll meet every target. You know, it won't be hard to meet. We'll go after every target that we committed to, and it's something on my mind, like all the time.
Casey?
It's it's interesting that Kevin described it the way he did, because look, we're in the service business, so we represent clients, and I look at diversity as a competitive advantage, because if your job is to give clients the best advice, if it's a bunch of 47-year-old white Jewish people who work at my company, I don't need all those people, because they're all going to think and say the same thing I am. The way you get diversity of thought is diversity of perspective, and that requires you to have a diverse workforce. That to me is actually, to your point, it is actually an economic advantage to be diverse. It's not about numbers and systems and checking a box. This is about...
Respectfully, we've been saying that for a lot of years, not Wasserman specifically, but Hollywood has been.
Well, look, no. Here's what I'm certain. I'm incredibly proud of what we have done, and I'm certain we can do better. And I'm certain everybody should be saying the same thing. Now, having said that, the challenge, so if you believe in a culture, and you believe in maintaining a culture of a company, the way to build diversity is at the bottom of the funnel, not at the top. Because the way to have the next person in my seat is that 15 years ago, the entire intern class was women, Latinos, or African Americans. 15 years ago. Not hiring a general counsel who checks a box today, because everyone's going to try and hire that person. Kevin's in his position because he had an opportunity. If 500 more Kevins had that same opportunity, he wouldn't be one of a small handful. There'd be a lot. So when I look at our company, we have been incredibly diverse. 35% of my employees started as interns. I have 1,500 employees. Every one of my intern classes is, you'd be hard pressed to find a white male in an intern class in the last 10 years at Wasserman. Very intentionally, because that's how you build culture, that's how you create success, and that's how you create a bigger pool of opportunity for a diverse set of people.
Can you talk about the numbers?
Look, I don't know. I don't speak for other agencies. And
I mean, we have actually surveyed the agency, and they all had committed publicly to certain numbers of diversity and gender equity. When we asked them, they wouldn't even talk about it.
Right. And by the way, we buy a music business, and the first thing we recognized is, wow, almost the entire leadership team is white. Now, a ton of incredible female executives, high-level leadership in the business. And so when we bought the business, I said, first of all, the clients we serve don't look like the people who serve them. So we need to do a better job. And so we announced I funded personally, and we announced a partnership with Color Change to hold us to a higher standard in the music business. That's how we started that business, because we said, look, we're buying a business. We didn't create the business, but we need to do a better job. And that's about doing the hard work and investing over a long period of time. There's this great quote I love that success comes from long obedience in the same direction.
That's very nice. So the next time we do this survey, would you take part in that survey?
If the numbers were anonymous, we would. In other words, if you don't tell everyone else our numbers, because we don't like to, we have a different way of discussing it with our employees. We're very transparent, but that's not something we share with the world. But we share it very clearly internally.
Yeah, no, we're the world.
I know we don't share it with the world. That's what I said.
It's hard to have that conversation unless we get that transparency.
No, but you can show agency A, B, C. You don't have to, again, I'm happy to do that.
Before we have to wrap up, overall, I'd love your opinion on whether you are optimistic or pessimistic about where entertainment and media in LA is going in the next, say, 3 to 5 years.
Optimistic because, I'm not a pessimistic person. So it's a core industry. I mean, we export entertainment globally. It's central to it, and there are a lot of smart people in this business. So I'm going to be optimistic because people need entertainment, and all of the obstacles will be figured out.
Despite consolidation and jobs lost.
This is what I look at it. At the end of the day, I'm a storyteller, right? And I look at it, all the new storytelling. It's become democratized. Some of the greatest, most interesting things that are happening are on social platforms like YouTube and TikTok. There's an incredible number of people on Instagram creating things, telling stories, small films, great social content creators. So the world of entertainment is widening, and it's not just a matter of can you do something for linear television or create a big film, and everybody who is in the content creation business, they got competition. There's nothing but somebody waiting to step in and do something. The one thing, and this gets back to diversity too, is opportunity. Give more opportunity to people who don't have it. I mean, we act like 6 people can make a film, or produce one, or act in one. And in fact, they're like millions. The talent is everywhere. So, I look at it in my business, I challenge people to do something ahead of your time. Let's discover people before they become somebody that you're writing about. So that's, and they're out there.
Casey?
Look, I think Kevin and I are both going to not answer the question you asked, which I think the question you were asking is the traditional entertainment business, the traditional studios, make a film in a soundstage. And I think Kevin's perspective, and I would even expand it further, is let's just talk about things that are delivered to the world. That's sports, that's music, that's YouTube videos, that's TikTok videos, that's Instagram. And I believe that LA is the best place on earth to come and tell your story. Whatever that story is, in whatever format you want to tell it, that this is a community built on creative energy and creative success. And that's why the world events come here. There's a reason I believe the Academy Awards are here. There's a reason I believe the Grammys wants to be here. There's a reason the Super Bowl is coming here. There's a reason that our sports teams are as successful as any in the world. There's a reason that, so many of those creators are from here and live here. There's a reason that The Olympics is coming here. This is the place where the world comes to tell their story. And I think that's in our fabric as a community. So
I co-sign. I co-sign.
And I think who those creators are, to Kevin's point, you look at jobs lost. Well, how many people are making a living on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube that wasn't even a job before? I don't know. I don't even know how to capture that information. But the opportunity is enormous, and I don't believe that there's a better place to do that than Los Angeles.
I'd like to believe that's true, and I'm going to co-sign it with you. Thank you so much, Casey and Kevin, for joining me for this fascinating conversation. Welcome to our keynote interview at TheGrill with Scott Stuber, the head of global films at Netflix. We are here in the Netflix headquarters for this particular interview, and let me tell you a little bit about Scott. Scott Stuber oversees a vast film production, acquisition, and distribution empire that is far beyond the scale of traditional studios, which is where he grew up. Scott, I've learned, started as an assistant at Universal Studios. He then rose over time to become the co-president of production at that studio and then vice chairman of worldwide production. And he then transitioned to become one of the studio's top producers. Then in 2017, Scott made the leap to Netflix as the industry started its transition to streaming and as streaming began its rise in the movie business. Since then, he's been ramping up production to roll out about 60 movies a year in the United States, this year anyway, and another 20 to 30 movies globally. Among the major titles for awards Netflix has this fall include Jane Campion's Power of the Dog, Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Lost Daughter, which both just won glory at the Venice Film Festival, but he has also been the executive who oversaw Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, the Academy Award winner Marriage Story, Roma, and streaming hits The Old Guard and Bird Box. He also, I happen to know, has 3 extremely adorable kids. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
This is a big deal for us to have you as our keynote interview at TheGrill, and thank you so much for having us to your home in Netflix. All right, let me just start by asking you to comment on a quote that Patty Jenkins, the director of Wonder Woman 2, said this year at CinemaCon not too long ago, just a few weeks ago. She was asked about streaming movies, and she said, quote, "I don't hear about them, I don't read about them. It's not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness."
Listen, we're in a really changing time, right? And I think we're all trying to figure out what that means, and everyone's got their perspective on it. I think what we're all trying to get to is maintaining movies, right? Maintaining that 2-hour thing of where we all fall in love with that story. We've all seen iterations of this over our lifetimes. We've seen the VHS, we've seen different things. The truth is, greatness comes in what that story is, right? And then how you get it to those people is a different iteration of what we're going through right now. But everyone's gonna have their own perspective. We're all trying to figure it out. And for us, we're trying to make the best movies, right? And finding the widest possible audience. And so having done it theatrically and then seeing the numbers that we do streaming-wise, I can say we're reaching in an amount of people that is sometimes far exceeding what theatrical can. So I think for all of us, it's figuring out in this new world order, what is going to be greatness? What is going to be memorable? How are we going to define these movies for generations the way they did for us? So it's an ongoing conversation.
That doesn't sting for you a little bit that a leading director would feel like, I can't achieve greatness if I come make my movies at Netflix, which listen, some people did say they have changed their minds over time too.
Yeah, and listen, for me, I came here with the recognition that I was starting at the bottom, right? The recognition that we were in last place, and in some ways not even in the league.
What do you mean by starting at the bottom? What do you mean?
Meaning that in the film industry, we were going to have to build a film studio and prove ourselves.
Right.
I wasn't inheriting a legacy studio. I wasn't taking over Paramount or Warner Brothers where people knew what they were and what they had in their library. It was, we have no library, we have no IP. What are we going to do? How are we going to define ourselves? How are we going to be different? And with that comes criticism, with that comes concern, with that comes all these things. If you're not listening to those criticisms, if you're not adapting to them, then you can't build something special, right? And so 4 years in, I'm proud of what we've accomplished, but we have a lot to accomplish. So someone like Patty Jenkins, I want to hear what she has to say. She's an incredible storyteller, a big filmmaker. And so if those things aren't resonating for her, then it's incumbent on me to listen, hear them, show her where I think maybe there's a different point of view, but also figure out within her point of view how I can expand and make it great, right? So You don't build it overnight. You continue to iterate it, and this has always been a long-term plan for me. How do we get to the place where everyone, at some point in the next 5 years, goes, that's the best film studio in the world, and that's something we're trying to do.
That is a really compelling vision that you've just described, and maybe I would have heard Ted Sarandos, who was really one of the first, he was the first keynote interview at our very first grill 12 years ago and came a bunch of other times. Netflix was nothing like the company it is today, was nothing like the powerhouse it is today. The entire power dynamic in this industry has changed, and COVID, as you know, has transformed that completely. Like what was happening and what we would talk about at the grill every year, like the change is happening, the change is happening. And then finally, like 2 years ago, I remember I stood up in my opening remarks, I'm like, the change is here, people, but that was before COVID even. Now, it's like, disruption is just constant and total, but Netflix has been able to ride above that because all of those disruptive changes that everybody else is adopting now, you guys already did. Do you feel like some kind of vindication in going through this period where Netflix continues to gain subscribers past where I think people thought were possible in terms of numbers, continues to expand globally, and now you're making, it's really kind of hard to get my head around this 60 movies a year, it seems, or I guess it's 70 or it's some kind of crazy number.
It's a lot, yeah. But it's not just me. We have a lot of great executives and teams. And
oh, it's not just you? You're not making
no,
all
it's just not me in
okay.
the corner, yes. It'd be a lot of
That's
reading.
so great to know, okay.
But I think to your point, I mean, listen, when I took the job, a lot of it was the recognition that the world was changing. And you mentioned in your opening remarks, I have 3 kids.
Right.
And I watch the way they work, and I watch the way the world is changing, and I watch how I can get a car on my phone to pick me up. I can get a place to stay. I can go get a coffee. I can order a tie. The world was iterating through technology so quickly. And for me, the option and the opportunity to build a studio but learn this new distribution model was very appealing. To your point, I remember a very close friend of mine calling me when Disney bought Fox. And I had had these conversations with him about, you should take this job. We're all going to have to learn this model. It is the future. Learn it before everyone else has to. You'll have the old and the new in your brain. And he called me that morning and he said, the future's now, right? Something cataclysmic happened in the legacy that we had all grown up in, and now Fox was no longer going to be Fox. And so I think we've seen all that accelerate over the last couple of years, and to your point, COVID has accelerated somewhat. But you can't, to me, get lost in those things because then you lose focus on what really matters. And what really matters is telling great stories. I think the expansion of these things globally, all these studios making things, it's great for the creators. There's so many opportunities globally. There's so many opportunities in Europe and Latin America and Asia for these great storytellers to tell their story to a global audience. So I think you have to look at it as what it's going to become and how we're going to change the world through storytelling, which, not to be Pollyannish, but I think we need it more than ever as a culture and as a world where we're dividing ourselves more. And if we can see ourselves through each other, hopefully we'll heal those differences that we're creating. But I do believe it's a great time, and I think in the film business in particular, which is changing in a way that is radical and unsettling for all of us, including me, how do we find that balance? What is it going to be so that my kids love it as much as I do, right? I
Don't you worry that there won't be movies in theaters for your kids to go to when they're
No, I
your
don't
age,
believe
for
that. I
example?
think that's,
No?
I think, you know, we all love the communal experience, right? If you think of all those things that we can have at home in different variations, whether it's food in restaurants, whether it's sporting events and live sporting events, whatever it is,
Ted always
there's
used to, that was
something-
always Ted's line, right? About you don't always,
Yeah,
you
and
cook
it's,
at home,
but
you go
I
out,
think
but
about
still.
it, I can, you know, with sports now, I can watch the Rams every weekend if I wanted to at home, but
Sure.
there's something, I'm excited to take my son to see Tom Brady in 2 weeks, right? It's going to be a great day for our family. Those are things that you can't replicate. So I think the human experience is always finding those moments. The theatrical experience is a great presentation of a film, the sound, the design, everything that the filmmaker wants. There's a bunch of things that I was trying to get everyone to communicate around, and I think now we're all talking about, and I think it's good for the business.
Well, ideally, what role would you like to see Netflix play in theatrical, if any, or is it just like, nope, that's
No,
not for
I think
us?
it's important. I mean, I think it's been misreported so much how negative this company has been about theatrical, and it never was that, right? I mean, what Reed figured out very quickly was the relationship with the audience and the relationship with the consumer, right? And I think what we've done as a company is recognize that consumer is financing our movies, right? At the end of the day, that they are a financier. And so we have to figure out a model that they're expecting to get that film as soon as it's released, right? So what we've done is try to figure out iterations on that. We worked with the Academy, we worked with different things in terms of how we, qualify. Roma got 3 weeks, The Irishman got 5 weeks, Marriage Story. So we've been much more dynamic than people think. We were just not completely fitting within the 3-month window, right? Which is a difficult window,
Well,
and it's
and
why it
typically
became very specific
yeah,
in
but
terms
it's-
of the movies that got
Okay,
made.
no, but it's still very much the exception that a Netflix movie would ever be in a theater. And it's very specific around the movies that you wanted to bring awards attention to and perhaps give people the experience of seeing it, or maybe make the director happy as well, who wants to see his or her film on a big screen. Patty Jenkins.
Well, we've
for
put a
one.
lot of films in theaters that people don't recognize, right? So we've actually had a lot of theatrical. It's just been mainly because the big exhibition, which wanted the full window, has been the challenge. But we had a great relationship with Cinemark earlier this year with Army of the Dead, and we put it in all their theaters and had a great result with them and a great result for the film. So we're all iterating and going into it. So we're having the
Do
conversations.
you
but-
have in your head, like, I would like to have 10 movies a year in theaters, or?
No,
Three.
to me, it's not even a number. It's about what is worthy, right? What makes sense for us and for the exhibition and for the filmmaker, right? At the end of the day, it's a business model, just like Netflix is a business model, right? So if you can find the right film that feels like people will want to come out of the home, experience that film on the big screen, have that model and do it, then it could be 5, it could be 50, right?
Can
There's
you give
really
me an
no
example?
number.
Let's see, you've got some very big films coming out at
Yep.
Christmas. Are they going to be in theaters?
Yeah, well, Hand of God, Power of the Dog, they'll all have the
They'll
theatrical.
be in theaters. What
Yep.
about your
The Harder
like
They
commercial
Fall,
or
Harder They Fall will
your
be
more commercial films
theatrically.
like
Yep.
Red Notice? Is that
Yep.
going in theaters?
Yep. So we're just working it out now. I mean, we're obviously all dealing with what the COVID restrictions are. So we're all, whether it's us or Sony or Universal, we're all trying to figure out those models right now. So we're working through it globally like everyone else. I mean, right now, unfortunately, as we know, New Zealand and Australia are shut down because of COVID. So it's an ever-going kind of maneuver, but everything intentionally has that for this fall.
Is that something that you feel like you've brought to the role as somebody who really grew up in the legacy studio system and maybe has a love for theaters, and that you brought that with you to Netflix?
Yeah, and I think, listen, Ted has a great deep love, and so does Reed of movies, right? They're real movie lovers. And for me,
For sure.
you have no idea how important that is to work at a company. I have worked and know friends who work at many of these companies where the boss or the owner doesn't even like movies or doesn't even watch movies or doesn't think it.
Really?
And so to have someone like these guys who have such passion for it and love it and talk about it and get excited about not only what we're doing but what they see at festivals it's a great thing for me, and particularly the teams who know that there's such enthusiasm up above about what we're doing. And then the reality is we know that we have to build into it. I mean, the other thing that became so fire and brimstone was, remember, we had nothing. We couldn't remake a movie. We didn't own Pixar. We didn't own a piece of IP. We didn't own DC. And if you studied the business, which I did quite a bit, those original films very rarely got made. And if they did, they had a very finite amount of time because they were getting followed by a big Marvel movie or a big thing. So the calendar was difficult. So to make a
This is true.
business, to make a successful business, we had to build slowly and smartly. If we had have just rushed all those films into the long-term theatrical business, we wouldn't have been successful. And that's not how you build a strong business.
So Netflix, as you continue to run the film business, will regularly have your movies in theaters. Is that
Yeah, we've
what
had it
we
for the
would
last
could
3 years,
anticipate?
and we're going to continue to do
A
it.
little
and-
bit, Scott. Like
No.
hardly. Come on. I mean,
No, we've had great runs with our partners at Landmark and Alamo and different places.
What's the widest
It's really
release you've
been
done?
that they've tried to hold us to that
Right, that
long-term
window. Yeah, of
right?
course.
And now I think we're trying to figure out with everyone, we're having the same conversations as everyone, right? And I think, right now we have a longer
Like a
window
15-day
this fall than
window?
some of the traditional studios
You
do,
do?
right? So
Like which
yes.
one?
So some of the things that are all day and date, like Warner Brothers right now, we have a longer window than them, right? So it's all changing.
Warner
and they're
Brothers
trying
just
to
lost
change their
Christopher
business.
Nolan. I mean, that is not a happy day for Warner
That
Brothers.
was a big change in the world.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, everyone's trying to figure it out, and everyone's trying to do right by COVID, trying to do right by their partners. I mean, it's a unique time that everyone's working through. And for us, it's trying to find out within these changes, where do we fit, right? And we're having those conversations, and they've been great, right? And,
So
and
let me
we'll
ask
find
you.
the right model.
Let me ask you about the flip side of that. So I was asking you about the theatrical side. At what point, now that you have sort of toe-to-toe competitors that are as tech savvy as Netflix is, Amazon, Apple, deep pockets as Netflix has been able to have, and committed to really owning a share of the market. How are you feeling about that, the rise of these streamers? And we can talk about Peacock as well, and all of them. Where is like the glut moment? It's too much choice, too many subscriptions for the average person, paying not enough time in the day to watch all the stuff that's being put out there. Like we talked about Peak TV 2 and 3 years ago. I know you're filming on TV, but the principle's the same. There's just a lot of content out there.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about that?
I think it's you recognize great is everything now. Great, you have to make things great, right? So if you're making 8 or 80, you have to make them great. There is such competition for people's attention
How is that
across
possible?
every medium.
How is that possible? You can't make 80 great movies.
No, but I think you have to reconsider who's great for, right? So you have to think about what audiences you're serving. What we know in this big of an audience globally that we have, great to use different to someone from another country, from another generation, from different things. So you have to be thoughtful about that, right? And then when you're making that, whether it's a teen rom-com or a big sci-fi movie, then you have to execute as great as you can, right? And I think if I have a criticism about our own selves, we have to get better at that, right? That is the thing that I'm striving for, is how do we consistently make great film? How do we do that on a big level? And I think that's for all the competitors. I think that's for all of us, is whether it's television, film, music, the new restaurants, there's a lot of choices for the consumer. Technology has opened up our opportunities in so many ways. And great is what is working, right? Novels, books, whatever it is. So for us, as people making art, the obligation is to make great things so the consumer thinks of Netflix as the home for the best in what we're trying to achieve.
Take a step back for me and help me understand how practically you go about your job. Because it is really hard, just having observed and covered the traditional studio business for a long time, where people are making anywhere from 10 to 12, or at their heyday, 20 movies a year. I'm picking a number, but whether it's Disney or Warner Bros., whatever, to something like a number like 60. And I realize that they're not all huge, $150 million budgets, although some of them are. So how do you go about organizing, prioritizing, or get where you're getting involved, because you're one person?
Well, we've got a lot of teams, so it's almost like multiple studios, right? We just don't sub-brand the way traditional studios have in the past with like Sony with Classics and Screen Gems and TriStar and whatnot, or Fox when they had 2000. But we have a version of that, right? So we have an animation group who makes our animation films. We have a documentary team. We have a team that is kind of akin to Searchlight and New Line. So they'll make some of the art films, they do the acquisitions, they make a lot of the teen rom-coms or the horror films, and then we have the big studio team, and we have the international team. So I have a lot of extraordinarily talented people running those divisions for me.
So what do you
So then I come
get
in,
involved in? Yeah.
So then I get involved with all of them. So every week I have a meeting with each one of those teams. We go through what they're doing, what they need. Inevitably there's 2 or 3 needs that I have to step into, whether it's talent relations, whether it's will you watch the cut of this film, will you read the script because we want to make it. So it's kind of moving through, and I've got a good rhythm on it, right? At the beginning, it was new, to your point. The scale was really unique, right? You're like, okay, how do I build this, get the right people in those places, and then maintain the scale? And so I feel really good right now with what we have. We have a really strong group of executives. We all know each other well, so they know when to raise their hand, and they know when to get it done. And
they're generally asking you, Scott, read the script, rather than here's our top, here's what we're going to have to make some decisions, and I'm going to go home and read these 10.
No, I still have, now it's digital. It used to be the joke that we
whatever.
have for those of us who've done it for a while was the box on your front door on Friday night. Now it's a digital box that I get every Friday night. And it's, the new cut of whatever big movie we're making, as well as here's the 8 or 12 scripts that we want you to look at this weekend.
And you read them.
I do. I think it's important in this job, you have to stay refined, right? You go back to earlier, I like the competition. I grew up playing sports. I like competition, and the only way you can stay good is to stay sharp and continue to refine your skills. So I think one of the skills I have actually is reading a script and figuring out where it's broken, or watching a cut and figuring out where it's broken. And I think it's important for me to continue to do that and help guide the teams, and particularly when you've been in it with the producers and you're on draft 9, and sometimes you're not seeing the forest through the trees. It's good for me to come in and be like, if you did this and this, you guys should think about that. So it's something I really enjoy.
I mean, I have to say, like, you have always made it look pretty easy. I've followed your career for a long time, which I'm sure is really aggravating to other people. What was the trajectory? I mean, you acted when you were younger.
Not traditionally.
You told me
no. I was.
You told me before we
I always
started.
wanted to be in the film business. Never an
Yeah.
actor. I was always behind the scenes, and
Except for Free Willy.
Well, yes, but I worked for Richard Donner. I think probably the secret, and I'll get to the acting thing, was I worked for Richard Donner and
Right.
Lauren Schuler Donner, and he loved to put people that
Legendary
worked with him
directors, by the way.
into the movie. The greatest, one of the Hall of Fame human being, Hall of Fame career, which is rare in our business.
Very.
And he loved to put people in the movies, like for fun, that worked for him, as jokes. So he, in a movie, Free Willy, he made me be a police officer, and then in Assassins, a valet parker, and played a joke on me because I had to pull the car around for Julianne Moore and Sylvester Stallone. And he put the seat as far up against it. He had the props team put the seat up and rig so when I turned it on, the wipers and the spray would go like I had screwed up the take. Which obviously, as a kid, you're afraid. There's Rocky and there's Julianne Moore, so I'm
Right.
like, please don't make me do this. So he made me do it, and then got a good laugh out of it and got a good drag reel. But the truth was, it was always behind the camera and behind the scenes.
Right.
And I think, listen, I got really lucky in this business. I had excellent mentors. I had people that really guided me and taught me, starting with Dick and Lauren, who are A-plus people. And if you look at the lineage of who Lauren trained, it's me and Nina Jacobson and Jeremy Kleiner and Kevin Feige and Julie Dirk, and just an incredible group of people.
That's quite a group.
Yeah, and it's a testament to her, right, and who she was and the way she taught us and made us learn. And then, I was lucky to go to Universal at a time with a group of colleagues the same age, roughly, with Kevin Misher and Donna Langley and Mary Parent and Ali Brecker, God rest her soul, was an incredible person. And just Holly Barrio and Stacey Snyder and Mark Platt. And they were great. So we were all in it together. And then Ron Meyer was an excellent mentor. And I've been lucky with Ted and Reed. So I've been blessed in terms of good people, gracious people that understand fair and right. And so you learn that way. That's how you learn. And you learn to try to do the job as hard as you can. I mean, I have great parents that were like, work hard and always look someone in the eye and tell them the truth, right? Your word is everything.
I
and
know,
your
what are
work
you doing
ethic.
in Hollywood, Scott? That is definitely not this business.
But I mean, I think it's helped me that way because I think people know I will follow through. I will give them my word. I will try to succeed for them. I will try to follow through. And when I can't do it, and I say I can't do it, there's a reason and there's a truth behind that, hopefully.
Because sometimes you got to deliver bad news. Let me ask you a question. If you were running Warner Brothers last year and had to make the decision that theatrical was going away at least for a year, and God only knows beyond that, and movies that people like Patty Jenkins were 1,000% committed to theatrical, and others, but that was one in particular we know. There's been criticism leveled that there was no proper warning of the people who were involved at this shift. Do you think that was you would have handled that differently?
Well, I think we can all speculate on things, and it's hard to know anyone's business or what the meetings were or what they're in. And what I do know is Toby and Ann are strong, terrific people and smart executives. I don't know Jason, but he seems like a really smart guy who's tried to figure out how to move that company into what corporate really wanted to move him in. So we can all be critics in those situations, but to me, it's more about like the empathy of they're dealing with COVID. They've got a big slate. They have a big business initiative. How they got there, you can all pick over, but I think it's actually done well for them. And I think on that particular issue, the truth is we're all dealing with big egos and we're all insecure. At the end of the day, the great thing about this business is we're in touch with our 13-year-old self. The bad thing is that 13-year-old self is always there. That fear of not coming through, that fear of not succeeding, that fear of putting yourself out there and no one liking your joke or no one liking your movie. And when we remember that about each other and we empathize and we communicate, we avoid a lot of the problems, right? So I think that to me is I always think the person on the other end of this phone is coming at it from a really vulnerable place. And my job is to over-communicate with that person to figure out how we get to the common end of what we need to do to help each other be successful.
Tell me about the movies you're excited about from Netflix. I saw Power of the Dog. It's wonderful. Jane Campion's new movie. There's a lot of movies I haven't seen yet. You've got some big movies coming at the end of the year. But anyway, first of all, congratulations
Thank you.
on Jane Campion taking home was the Best Director at Venice, and Maggie Gyllenhaal, her first directorial debut, she won for screenwriting. Anyway, that's very cool, and I'm really excited to see Maggie's movie. What are you excited about on your slate in particular?
I'm excited about both those. I mean, one of the things I actually love, I love making movies, and I love filmmakers and storytellers, right? So one of the great things is I'm still get very excited, right? Like making a movie with Scorsese, with Marty, who I've known, but making The Irishman, I still get giddy about. I still have picture, it's still important to me. He's defined so much of my life. And Jane has always been this woman I've idolized. So
Jane Campion.
Yeah, one of the pleasures of making this movie is getting to know her. She's an incredible woman. She's such a trailblazer, and it's just such a source of pride. And selfishly, I want to be around her and absorb as much as I can. And I think the film is extraordinary and beautiful. And we've got a great group of women directors this fall behind her that are kind of trailblazing like her, like Maggie and Halle Berry and Rebecca Hall and Nora, and we just have a bunch of really strong female directors that I'm excited about.
Rebecca Hall has Passing, right, which I saw. It's very good.
Yeah, which is very good. And Halle's got Bruised, which she's starring in and directing, and I think that's an exciting, evolution. We've got James Samuels, who's got this terrific movie, The Harder They Fall, which I think you're going to love.
Is that the Western?
Yeah, it's the Western.
But you guys don't have clips of any of this stuff. You're not
We'll
going to show
get it
me.
for you. We'll get it for you. We've got Red Notice, which I'm excited about, which has 3 terrific stars in Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds and The Rock.
Right, Ryan Reynolds and The Rock
Yep.
and Gal Gadot.
Yep.
Yeah, and what's that one about?
It's a big fun heist movie. So it's a big kind of like 3-card Monty that keeps you guessing, and it's about these 3 art thieves and who's going to figure each other out.
So if that's going to be in theaters, which you said before, right? How many theaters do you think you would put that in?
We're still working that out with exhibition.
But I mean, is
right?
it like
So-
thousands or is it like hundreds?
You know what? I don't know yet. So it's tricky because it's still an ongoing conversation and trying to figure out how when the movie gets finished and
if
do
you
all
could
that.
wave a wand, what would like if
I could
COVID
wave a
didn't happen
wand.
and you didn't have 10
Well,
other
I think
competitors?
we'll probably be in the high 100, like the high 6, 7, 800s, probably similar to Army of Dead because we'll probably work with similar exhibition communities on that one.
Okay, so it's still that's somewhere between a limited release. No, it's not quite a wide release,
No, it's
but
not quite, but we're getting up there, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just trying to figure out, like I said, there's still long-term conversations we want to work out with all those, like AMC and Regal and, and they're smart and terrific people there. So it's really trying to figure out what fits for them, and they're having this with everyone. So
you feel confident that theaters will survive?
I do. I think the movie-going experience is innate in culture. I think it's changing. I think kids are seeing things in a uniquely different way. But I do think if something matters to a 14 or 15-year-old, he or she's going to run out and see that with their friends, right? And I think it's incumbent on all of us who do that to make those movies that penetrate, whether it's there, whether it's at home, whatever it is. We're trying to culturally really hit people with lightning, right? I mean, that really is the job at the end of the day is, can you strike someone with a lightning bolt to make he or she, wherever they are in the world, go, I want to be that person, I want to do that for a living, I want to tell that story, and you get the next generation the way that, we reminisce, rightfully so, about the 70s, and I'm hoping that with these changes in windows and the opening up, you're going to hopefully find a new generation of those storytellers, right? You're going to find the next Jane Campion and the next Spike Lee, and you're going to have all these, the next Marty coming through. And you're starting to see that. I think there's a lot of really exciting filmmakers. I think the Safdie brothers are really exciting filmmakers, right?
They're so crazy.
And I think there's
talented.
So many people, and I see what Sofia Coppola continues to build in her career, and I think she's so interesting and talented. And you can go on and on. There's an enormous amount of young filmmakers that I think will tell great stories.
What as you look out over the horizon, what worries you as ahead of a now mature film business that you've built, and it's a big machine, and all this competition coming, and the difficulty of planning that COVID has kind of whipsawed everybody for the last 18 months. So what sort of keeps you up at night?
I mean, on a big level, that from a human standpoint, COVID, right? And how do we find with an ever evolving flu that gets new strains, with the economic and social inequity that we have around the globe, that is a global pandemic, how do we find ourselves back to safety, right, in the right way? How do we get our sets safe? How do we get the environment and theaters safe? How do we get all these things? So that's a challenge for all of us. It's a human challenge that we need to reconcile as humans, and how do we help others who in need at this moment. And then I think really as we move forward, I think the evolution of movie making, it's very tough right now. It's very expensive in terms of the COVID costs and how do you keep things safe and proper. And hopefully when we get
like
through
what can you quantify, like what's the additional cost? Is it like 20% more? Or
yeah, it depends. Every film is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
It probably wavers between 5 and 15% on the economics, but it's the size of the crew, the size of the bubble, the size of the testing, the shutdowns that sometimes happen as they do within everybody's movies or television shows. So I think that's a challenge right now, and I think getting people back to that vibrancy of creativity, which is nice because you can feel it in the community, right? You can feel people excited about telling new and different stories, which is exciting. And then I think to your point, existential question is like keeping movies at the forefront of culture, right? That is something that's really thoughtful for me as someone who not only runs Netflix Film Studio, but someone who deeply loves this business and is in the academy and is someone who fancies themselves part of the community. Like, how do we as a community keep this art form as relevant as it is, right? Because I do love spending time with my kids watching those movies that define my life, and I want them to do the same with theirs.
I mean, I feel, I agree with you because TikTok is like the popular thing all of a sudden, and YouTube is...
You're great on it, by the way.
Yeah, thank you so much. My dance moves are epic. Everybody at the Grill every year, is there somebody who stands up and says, yeah, my kids don't watch TV, they watch YouTube every year for the past 5 years. And it is remarkable every time you do see a great film. And, yes, I thought Power of the Dog, it moved me. Like by the end of it, it was like, I felt like I'd gone somewhere, been taken somewhere. And sometimes wonder, okay, is our metabolism going to be able to kind of sit still and absorb that and have that patience, have the patience for that as we go forward, like what are we leaving behind, as we create these new technologies. But yeah, those are some of the things that I think about. But
I think we all do. And I think in a weird way, we all have to recognize you have to go to that generation and help them tell their story.
Yeah.
Right? And that thing of where we all kind of go, when I was a kid, I walked 80 miles in the snow to get to school. It's like, well, they don't, right? So what is it in their narrative form? What are their storytelling tools that we can help facilitate so that whatever that is their breakfast club? It is that movie that defined their generation the way John Hughes and those movies did for certain generations. What is their mean streets? What are those things that make them go, oh, that's how I tell this story about my generation, right? Because every generation always defines art in whatever music or art form that they do. So I think to your point, I don't want to make TikTok movies, but I think how do you find the narrative connectivity that generation is finding within that and then expand it? Right?
Yeah. So speaking of expanding, should we expect, there's 70 movies under your tutelage this year. Is it next year 80? Is it the year after 90? I mean, is this kind of an ever-expanding universe of content?
No,
or are you sort of at steady state?
I think, listen, what we're trying to do is find, like I said, we have such a global appetite for film, right? It's an interesting thing when you're actually programming and telling stories for the world so finitely because you're in their home and in their zeitgeist with them, and finding where those stories are. I think you're going to see an expansion of international stories, right? I think what you're seeing is a growth, and there's so many great storytellers, and we've seen it in the last few years. We were lucky with Roma, we saw it with Parasite. I think there's another great group of international stories this year. We're lucky to have Hand of God. I think you're seeing these global storytellers really rise up, and I think that's going to be an exciting expansion for us as a community as well as a company. And I think right now for us on that phase of English language and global, we're kind of at a good number. I don't see us growing. I think if anything, we refine it a little bit to try to continue to make great, right? That's my big thing is I don't think it matters to a consumer if you have 30 or 300, they just want to have them great, and that's really what we need to continue to do.
Well, Scott Stuber, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For coming to the Grill and getting
Thank you for
grilled. You got
coming
grilled.
to Netflix.
And thanks to you so much, our audience, for joining us.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Janine Rubenstein. I am former music editor, current editor at large, and also host of People Everyday podcast. This is all in the People family, and it is so great to be here. It's an honor to moderate this grill session on record labels and the modern music business. So we're here to challenge assumptions, get past obsolete stereotypes, and dig deep into what it takes to make a hit song today and how record labels and artists work together to turn those hit songs into lasting careers. So without further ado, let's meet this panel, starting with Jesse. In addition to being a singer, songwriter, and entrepreneur, Jesse James Decker is a Big Yellow Dog, Atlantic Records, Warner Music Nashville recording artist. Jesse is also a style entrepreneur, a television personality, and a New York Times best-selling author. She also happens to be the mother of 3 adorable children. And Jesse, I loved seeing you and Eric dancing with the kids to Should Have Known Better on Instagram. It was so cute. Then we have Chris Lacey, who is Executive Vice President of Artists and Repertoire at Warner Music Nashville, where she leads the team, seeking out and signing new talent and providing resources and creative support to the label's recording artist partners. In this role, she helped bring artists like Dan and Shay, Zach Brown Band, Ingrid Andress, and Ashley McBride to the Warner roster, as well as Jesse James Decker. Then there's Michelle Ann. She's an executive vice president, head of visual creative at Interscope Geffen A&M. Michelle's team collaborates with artists on visual elements of their work, including video, photography, packaging, advertising, live performances, film, and TV. According to Interscope Geffen A&M, Michelle's team works on over 100 videos a year with roughly 1 billion monthly views. 1 billion. And then we're going to move on over to Phil Thornton. He is Senior Vice President and General Manager of RCA Inspiration, a division of Sony Music Entertainment, where he works with a wide range of inspirational artists, including Kirk Franklin, Marvin Sapp, and Donnie McClurkin. A true Renaissance man, Phil is also a successful film and television producer, artist manager, and podcaster. He's proof that there truly are no more silos in the entertainment business. Then we have Michelle Ballantyne, last but definitely not least. She is the Chief Operating Officer at the Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA, the trade association that represents record labels in Washington, D.C. Michelle is an attorney with a distinguished background in politics and policy, working on Senator Tom Daschle's staff, and then as a special assistant to President Bill Clinton and a special counsel to White House Chief of Staff John Podesta. So guys, it is so exciting to be here with all of you. This is a stacked panel, and I can't wait to get into it. All right, so feel free to unmute as we go through this and pop in. I'm going to direct some questions to individuals, of course, but if something moves you, raise a hand and we'll get to it. So starting off with Jesse, which is maybe the simplest part to start, we want to go in on the artist's perspective. So what made you want to be in the country space? You had such success in so many different areas. Why is your heart so firmly planted in country music?
Well, my heart was with country music before I got into all these other businesses. So I started in music, and it's been my main passion. I never dreamt that I would be doing all these other things. I never thought I'd be making cookbooks. Didn't know I'd be on a TV show. I didn't know I'd be doing any of these other avenues. It just kind of happened that way. But my goal, as young as 3 years old, I wanted to be a country singer. I always had a plastic guitar in my hand, was drawing myself singing at the Grand Ole Opry, fantasizing about being a big country artist like Loretta Lynn or Shania Twain one day. And so it's just always been in my heart. I'm from the South. I've always been a country girl, and it's always been my dream and my goal. But, you know, life's funny that way. Your life will take you on a different journey that you never expected. And I always give the example of that movie Under the Tuscan Sun, where she's saying out loud, I want to have a wedding at this house, and I wanted to have a baby at this house, and I wanted to feed a family at this house. And even though she didn't have a baby, or and it wasn't her wedding, she had all those things happen just in a different way. She actually got everything she wanted, but just in a different way than she had pictured it. And so I feel like for me at this place, I've had things happen for me that are blessings, and I'm grateful, and I've worked really hard. They've just happened in a path that I never expected. And that's what's funny about this business and life.
For sure. So why join a record label? Why go for a record deal? What was it about that helped you achieve your goals in Nashville?
I've always wanted to be signed to a Nashville label. It has been my goal since I was, I graduated high school and I moved to Nashville 2 weeks later, and wanted a record deal so badly here because I wanted to be a country artist. I wanted to be on country radio. But I was passed by every label, got turned down, and ended up getting a record deal based out of New York. LA Reid signed me to a pop label. And even though I'm so grateful for LA and he's been one of my main and biggest cheerleaders, it wasn't the country music platform that I needed to grow. And so fast forward, I'm resilient. I do not give up. So if someone says no to me, I just don't even hear that. I just keep going until I get what I really want. And so I'm 33 years old. I've been doing this since 2007, going after this. And no was just not the answer. So I came knocking on Warner, sat in the room with Chris herself. And I told him my whole story. I was like, listen, I'm not going anywhere. I want to be a country singer. This is what I was born to do. And I'm here again. And they got me. They understood me.
Nice. And for any of the young or aspiring artists on here, what you said about not giving up and knocking down those doors, take heed. But also, what specifically, I guess, what is it about a record label, just in general, that, made it so much a part of your goal? I mean, the times were a little bit different then, but I'm just wondering, like, was it just having that security? Was it having that access to advertising? Like, what was it for you?
It's interesting. So back when I first got a record deal, there was no Instagram. There was no major social media. There was nothing. Twitter hadn't even started, actually. I think there was MySpace. And so the ability for artists to really put their music out there on their own wasn't there yet. And so for me, the answer was always, I need a record deal. I have to have a record deal. But fast forward, over 10 years, and I do have all those platforms. I do have an Instagram, and I do have, access to making myself visible to everybody. But when it comes down to it, I still want a record deal because I'm not only an artist, but I'm a businesswoman. And I know I want to have a business. I want a partnership with a record company that believes in me and understands me so that we can have this goal happen together. This is no different than any other business out there. This is a business relationship where I have a goal. I have a dream. I want to be on country radio. I want to get playlisted properly. I want to meet all the right people to help me make this happen. And I think for them, they see me as I'm hardworking and I'm passionate about this, and I'm going to outwork anybody in this industry. And so that's probably appealing to them. So it was just the right business relationship. But to sum up your question, I still think we need record companies. I do. And I still think we need them to help us in a different way outside of the outlets that we do have access to. But those outlets are great to get your start. So this has been very helpful to raise awareness of who I am as an artist, but I need them to go from here to here.
Yeah. And then just one last thing. I'm wondering of like one specific way you would say that your team, working with the label has been able to kind of expand your fan base, because you already had it and it was in kind of one lane, and then you needed to merge those two groups and grow them. So if you could point to like one thing that working with the label allowed you to do that.
Well, I think, we're just kind of getting started, but if I would say anything so far, it's getting playlisted on different streaming avenues that I've never been able to be on before. So maybe someone that's, on Apple Music and listening to country hits of the day, I would have naturally never been able to be put on that playlist. And maybe someone that's an avid listener on that playlist is going to say, oh, I love this song. I don't know this girl. And thanks to Warner and them implementing that, that's another way for me to be heard.
Nice. Okay. So let's switch over to the label's perspective with Chris Lacey.
Chris.
So tell us about Warner Atlantic's partnership with Jessie.
Oh man. It's a village. It's a village. We've got Big Yellow Dog, which is Carla Wallace. Carla's found several artists that you guys know, Megan Trainor and Maren Moore. So she's obviously really good at picking strong, talented female artists. And then we got Pete Gambarg over at Atlantic, who is just an amazing audiophile and the best in the business and a straight shooter. So we're really, really set up to win, with those two partners. But it's a village. We all work together. We discuss songs. We talk about, Jessie's brand. Obviously, she came in with a big following and a very distinct brand, and all we're trying to do is elevate it. You know, we cannot make an artist. The artist has to come in, and then we do our best to elevate it.
Got it. So I hear people assume that the way to make it in music today is to put out a few covers on YouTube, find a way to blow up on TikTok, and then boom, you're a star. But how does it really work these days? Like, what separates, the many who have these like kind of flash burnout viral moments from those who are able to just really dig their heels in and hang on?
Yeah, I think Jesse already spoke so eloquently about this is a business, people do release 1 or 2 songs and they do have viral moments, but there's a big difference in having a viral moment and then turning that into a long-term career. Not only does it take machinery behind it, we talk about record labels. If you look at the top 200, the Billboard top 200, there isn't anybody on there that isn't connected to a record label. And the reason is there's a machinery behind it. It is a business, right? If you want to be an international superstar, you need a level of expertise. So it takes that, but it takes mental and emotional stamina. It takes persistence. It takes that never say die attitude that Jesse has. It takes the desire to keep going. And I think that you have to really want to spread your message. There are artists that really want to be famous, in a moment, but are they artists or are they entertainers? Real artists, they have this vision, they have this message. It's almost a sermon. They preach, they have a testimony, and they speak to the voiceless. They make that connection, that energy exchange with people in the world that get to live vicariously through them. That is a much bigger idea than releasing one song to TikTok and everybody jumping on because you got a little video that says, I played this for my girlfriend's mom and she was excited. Woo, blow it up for me. That's like a call to action, but that's not an artist. So we joke, we say Spotify is not a marketing plan. Like, it's an amazing tool, but there are a lot of people, Phil, give it to me, Phil. But and I've heard for years, labels are going away and A&R people are going away. There always has to be somebody to fulfill the role of champion, filter, pushing you to stretch. Sometimes you stress and sometimes you stretch. Like, there always has to be somebody in that role. Yeah. It could be management, it could be A&R, it could be whatever. But artists need that team because this is a really, really tough business. And most folks who are releasing songs on TikTok are not ready for what it requires to take it to the next level.
For sure. And when you said, it's so well put, just describing artists and that moment about a sermon, it made me think of my church because you brought up Merida Morris and you just listen to that and you're like, oh, this is an artist. So how does social media help people get launched, though, on the flip side of all of this? Because it does feel like, to certain people now, that you have to have that huge fan base. And you did say you have to be an artist already before you come to me, but do you have to be Insta famous before you come to a record label?
You don't have to be. It helps, but you don't have to be. Some people aren't naturally good at that. But again, I think that's an extension of that energy. When you're an artist and you're playing live, you're putting energy out and the fans are sending energy back to you and you're feeding off of each other. So I think social media at its best is that same relationship. There's a level of trust that it's not an artist exploiting the fans. It's an artist connecting with the fans and sharing this level of trust. And that's kind of a sacred relationship. Yeah. So in doing that, they connect directly with fans and consumers. They don't have to rely on something like radio or, an area where there are a lot of restrictions. They can just freely connect. Yeah. And that's amazing. They several of the platforms, TikTok has an algorithm that is built in such a way that you're not relying on pure followers. And huge spends and ad spends and stuff like that. So it's really good if you are just starting. Fans can stumble across your music without
nice.
Yeah, all of the spend behind it. But there are negatives to it too. And I think when artists—
That's what I was gonna ask. Like
artists grow and then they start to have someone else sometimes do their socials for them and they lose touch. And so that high touch feeling that you got in the beginning is replaced with something too often slick or generic or whatever. And so again, it's like that trust that you're breaking. So a real important thing with all socials is just to be mindful of that connection that you share with fans. every one of the best artists that I know, they are their fans. You know, they don't see their fans as separate. They don't see themselves above their fans. They are their fans, and they remember that moment when they looked up to an artist or wanted to be, and they treat their fans, you know, with that level of respect and compassion.
Nice, nice. So Chris, at the risk of embarrassing you, Warner Music Nashville chairman and CEO John Esposito once said Chris Lacey is revered as one of the top A&R executives in the music industry. Her passion and knowledge of and for music is equaled only by her level of humanity. So humanity, like, it's not a word that comes up a lot when we think about record labels, but how does it help? How does it help a record label succeed to have that?
Oh man, I think Espo was just talking about the fact that I cry when I hear a lot of songs. I don't know. You know, music is all about the human condition. That's what humanity is. We all of us, no matter where we're from or what we believe, there are certain things that we want. You know, we want to feel safe, and we want to be loved, and we want to celebrate, and we want to grieve, and that's all music is. Music is that that olive branch, or that ambassador across cultures, religions, languages, you know. And so I don't know that music exists without humanity, and I don't know record labels can't exist without music. And so they're just synonymous to me. But I also think there's an important thing that we have to do as supporters of the creatives. Look, if any of us were as talented as Jessie here, you know, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. I mean, we all have to recognize that what she does every day is put her heart and soul out into the world to be criticized. She has to find enough strength within herself to tell everybody her deepest thoughts and feelings, and just turn a blind eye to how they judge her. And that is one of the bravest things that you can do in this world. So I think as a record label, you know, the humanity is, it's really easy for all of us to get in this cycle of, there's a song here and put this one out and do all these things and follow a marketing plan. You know what I mean? But it is a business. But to stay grounded in the fact that what these artists are doing takes a lot of guts and sacrifice. And when you're talking through songs, you really are talking through their diaries and the feelings that are attached to these things, and just be mindful of what it takes to keep folks like Jessie healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, physically healthy. And I think labels are really making some changes that are important. You know, in the past, I don't think they thought about any of that stuff, right? They'd give Jessie media training, or they'd say, here's a choreographer, or let's buy you some clothes, but nobody cared about how she felt when all of these things are changing, and nobody's.
And that happened.
Right.
All of it. Everything you just said verbatim. Media trainer, choreographer, this is what you're going to wear. You're going to be here at this time, and you can't say a word about it. Go.
And how
exactly.
Yeah. And who said, probably no one, what Al Andrews says, which is, how's your heart, Jessie?
Never. I got down to 102 pounds and was sick and sad and depressed and lonely and lost. 19-year-old girl plucked from Georgia. And I'm like, I don't know what's happened to me. You're absolutely right. And things have changed. Sorry to interrupt you, but she's just so smart. Exactly what you just said is what happened to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All the things. And it's anyway, so there's the two parts of it, right? There's the humanity for the world of the music that Jessie's putting out, and her connection to them, and how we want to bring that to the world. That gives us, a sense that we're doing something that matters. But then there's the humanity within the record label that everybody has to check themselves when they're having conversations about what your words mean. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. And just for those other young artists listening, or up and coming artists, hopefuls, what would you say is the one thing, just from a head A&R, that a young act should try to do to get signed? Like, what is the one thing that you would say is the most important thing that they could do?
Oof, it's hard because this takes some time. It's life, really, really know who you are. Again, you can put people around you that help you with all the businessy things, but what they can't do is tell your story. So, and your story has to be unique because you're unique. So I think that's, spend a lot of time figuring out exactly what it is that you want to say and why you're the only person that can say that. And then go after that. And then Jessie, what she said, man, just don't take no for an answer. Just keep going and keep going and keep going. I asked Kenny Chesney one time, what was different about you? Like, how did you, I mean, it could have been anybody. And he said, yeah, but nobody knew how bad I wanted it. He goes, what they didn't know was when I wasn't having hits yet, I wanted it worse than anybody else. And I knew I wanted it worse than anybody else. And I knew I was going to make it. And he was just sitting there. It was like this rally, And so you have to want it that badly. And Jesse's proof of that. What she's been able to accomplish is incredible. And also that she could get a platform for her music.
Nice. Well, moving to moving pictures, Michelle Ann, most people probably think of studios and sound recordings when they think of record labels, but in today's social digital world, so much storytelling is visual, video. Can you tell us about your team and how you collaborate with artists to bring this new dimension to their music?
Sure. First off, I just wanted to say thanks to the RIAA for putting on this event. And Janine, thank you so much for hosting. It's really great to be on this panel with all of you guys. I don't think any of us would be on this panel if we didn't care so much about our artists and the music and the work. So it's great to be connected, especially after such a hard year for so many of our colleagues, especially in the live space. So it's really nice just to hear Chris talk about humanity and caring, because I do think this is an industry that genuinely does care. So yes, so much of an artist's story is now so visual. Our job at a label is to help an artist reach their greatest creative and commercial success. So, at Interscope, we've structured the company in a way that we believe helps meet that goal. For example, when John Janik, our CEO, first came to the company, he decided to combine the video department that I was in with the photo department, and we just became one big visual creative department. And, that means your music videos, your photo shoots, your artwork, but now it means so much more. We now speak to the artists before they're signed. We speak to the artists when they're in the recording studio making the music. We're talking to them every step of the way of how they see their music visually. So, it translates into making creative for the normal tools, but it also translates into what does your TV show look like? What does your award show performance look like? What does your, what does your tour look like? And, do I know you well enough now that maybe we talk about making a TV show or a documentary or a feature film? So really, the box has been opened in the new way. Labels have structured themselves, and we're really there to help bring visual to life.
Nice. And well, Olivia Rodrigo thanked you and others at the IGA team for bringing Sour to life visually and being the most caring people in the world, she said. So what can you tell us about that process specifically and for this album, but more broadly, working with any new artist?
Olivia is a beautiful person on the inside and out. I think for my birthday this past summer, she baked cookies and literally dropped them off at my house herself. I think I still have to return Tupperware to her, but she's amazing. And I think a lot of Olivia's success has to do with the fact that she also has a brilliant manager, Kristen Smith. And what Kristen does so well is she hears her client out as a manager, but then she brings the team around Olivia in the right way. And she's built this phenomenal team, including working with the label creative team to make all of Olivia's visual dreams come true. Actually, all of her music dreams come true. So I think with a record label, a lot of it has to do with, one, building trust with that artist first. The artist really needs to trust their label. Two, really locking arms with awesome managers who will build that team around the artist. And then three, just getting to work and hearing the artist out and really executing that vision. So that is some key ingredients, I think, to success.
I love that. So we used to have album covers, as you said. Now we have the whole living tapestry of video, digital art, stage and set design, even fashion. Just how much visual work goes into the success of a song or an artist these days?
Oh my gosh. I feel like a song is as much about the audio as it is about the visual. I think, at IGA, we truly do believe that, which is why John has us structured the way we are. I think, we are there from the beginning, and we sit with the artist and we really dissect, what does every lyric mean to you? What color do you see? How would you describe your feeling? How would you interpret that visually? So we're sitting there locking arms with the artist and trying to make that really come to life. But it's not just the album cover. It's not just the music video. There are so many ways now. When I first came to IGA, which was 15 years ago, this idea of the long tail really kicked in. It wasn't just that there were a handful of gatekeepers. There's thousands of ways now for an artist to reach different niche audiences. And how are you making the visuals to super serve all those different audiences? And that's kind of what we're here to do. And the way we're structured now is, we have a revenue department that is talking to the streaming partners like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. And we have a publicity department that is talking to the Pitchforks or the AMAs or the Grammys. And we have an international department that's talking to every territory around the world. But what we're doing differently is, because for me, as part of the creative team, we're with the artists, really getting to understand their heart, their mind, and what they see visually. All the different platforms that I just described, we're making sure, and the label gives us space to talk to each of those platforms to make sure that the branding of the artist shines through. Whether it's a TV show in Japan or it's a interview for Apple Music, we're making sure that the branding is consistent throughout. And that really comes from really, really, really getting to know your artist. And that starts with trust.
Nice. Would you say there's been a shift from, that old idea of, this is what you're going to wear. This is what your video, that's a horrible idea. This is what you're going to do to, what you have now. Let's just go into a living example, Billie Eilish's Rotating Room SNL performance. It's been watched over 8 million times on YouTube. It's instantly memorable visual, and one you must have known would have been a big success. So with a piece like that, did that ideate with your team or with her, and how did that come about? And then is that something that you think about, will this go viral when you're making visuals like this?
Yeah, I don't, everyone always wants something to go viral. There's no secret formula to making something go viral. I think what we like to do is we like to start with artist authenticity. If an artist is authentic, if the idea is authentic and genuine, the fans know. The fans are so smart. So something will take off if the fans really connect to it. And that's through authenticity. And, Billie Eilish is the perfect example of an authentic artist. I would never tell Billie what to wear. I don't think anybody could tell Billie what to wear. But what I do understand is why she chooses to wear what she wants. And I think by flipping that understanding, we end up getting really creative together, and that's really fun. For SNL, it was something we had all ideated, and she had said, "Oh my gosh, for SNL, I want to be bouncing off the walls." So I think we pretty much came up with an idea that met that goal.
Nice. That's just such a good example of taking something that was organic from the artist and then using, what you guys have, this knowledge, this creativity from the record label to kind of turn it into what works for everyone. So that's so cool.
Yeah. Brian and Melanie at the SNL team and the whole crew over at SNL, they're amazing. And they really, again, listened to what Billie wanted. We worked with this awesome company, Moment Factory, to bring it to life. And Billie herself, through videos, through voice notes, through meetings at her house, I think it's in a making of video, but she literally took a tissue box and showed us how she wanted it to work and the speed of the rotation. So we're really getting that granular with our artists to build out their creative.
That's cool. That's cool. So I want to throw this to Jesse, though. The single art or an artist's music video is often like the first time a fan puts a face with a voice that they've heard on the radio or playlist. So can you tell us, as an artist, why having the right visuals is so important to your career?
And that is like probably what I think is one of my strengths. I am all about the visuals, and I think you can have the most amazing song or a singer, but I completely agree with Michelle. You've got to have that visual to match it. It's just as important. It just is. It always is. And I feel like I learned that even through my very first record deal. It was very important to L.A. Reid, and I learned that from him. He wanted you to look like a star, be a star, appear to be a star, and really find out what is unique to you and blow it up, because that's what's going to separate you from the rest. Your voice and your song is going to separate you, but so is your look, your image, the creative behind everything. What makes you different than everyone else? You know, and I look at even country music right now. Everything goes through trends. Everything goes through an image. We had our bro country with backward wear hats, and then it gets a little diluted and everyone's doing it. So you got to switch it up again. Right now, all the girls have found cowboy hats and cowboy boots, and they're all starting to wear the same thing. You got, who's going to be the next person to switch it up? Because it gets diluted, it gets worn out, and then you got to find the next trend to separate you. And that's what makes it, that your visual and your image, it actually makes it more authentic to you, because it makes you just as unique as the sound you're trying to give people. So obviously we're all inspired and influenced by artists from decades and decades ago. I'm obsessed with Jennifer Lopez and Shania Twain, and, you know, even right down to Loretta Lynn. I'm obsessed with these women, but how can I take those influences I love so much and really make it my own, so that no one looks like me? No one else's album packaging or music video looks like something like that I would do. And so when we went to go do that for Should Have Known Better, I feel like what I put together and what my team put together for my outfit, I've never seen anyone wear that. You know, we had an amazing convertible, old antique 1950s car in the desert, and, you know, we were doing our thing. It was different than anything you'd seen on CMT right now. And so that's the whole point, is to be creative, but make sure it's, you know, different than anything else that's out there.
All right, now we have to go over to our guy on the panel. We have not forgotten about him, and we are going to ask him about, well, you know, just doing it all, which ironically is something that I feel like women get asked about a lot, but you really do. You do it all in this industry. And so Phil Thornton, you know, artists do so much more than record and tour now, from social media to videos to podcasts to TV to fashion brands and product lines. And we have a great example of that here with us today with Jesse. So how do labels work to create new opportunities with their artist partners? And what does it take to build a strategy covering just so much different ground these days?
Well, first, I just want to thank you for having me here. I'm learning so much, and I feel like some of the smartest people in this industry. I'm like, I'm taking notes. Michelle, I'm taking notes. Chris and Jesse. I'm like, okay, like this is just, but it's our industry is constantly evolving, and a lot of things have been touched on the visual and just the overall heart and the direction, but the additional verticals is what I call them that can be created around our artists and partners. And, you know, at Sony Music, we're building everything from podcasts to documentaries to partnering with artists for various festivals. So we're looking at it in a holistic approach. Some might say years ago, a 360 approach, but I don't want to use that term in general, but looking at it from a holistic point of view to say, you know, talking with the artist, hearing their vision. One thing I always ask artists when I'm signing them or meeting them for the first time, give me your vision. Let's talk about goals, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and really hearing and understanding where they want to go and how we can serve and be the best partners. So I had an artist that sat down with me when I first started at Sony and expressed interest in wanting to do a music festival. And, you know, he walked me through it. And again, I would have thought this artist, because of the notoriety and the awards that he had, that this would be a no-brainer for him and his agent. That artist was Kirk Franklin. So immediately I said, this is a great idea. Let me pair you with an agent, a friend of mine who I think would totally get the concept. And fast forward, he's in the third year of his festival with Live Nation, you know, for the Exodus Festival. So yeah, just one example of how we listen to our artists, our partners, no matter if it's a new signing or a legacy act, to say, how can we be our, you know, as partner? We're building out, like I said, podcast or something that's constantly growing. You have over 111 million weekly listeners for podcasts. So that's as you know, Janine, so it's a growing market, but our artists and our partners, they have something to say, and it may be in the traditional musical form, but it may be like, hey, I have something to say every week for 30 minutes, and I just want to talk with some of my friends, or just share what's on my heart, or talk about mental health, or whatever is important to the artist. And we have to basically, in my opinion, support the artists and these ventures, because we're not just a partner on the music side. There's so much more there. So whether they want to write a book or a memoir, labels have, the role of the label has evolved over the years, and it will continue to evolve. And I look at our company as more of an entertainment company. So it's not just audio, music related. We do it all. And so we're going to continue to find those unique and innovative ways to partner with our artists.
Nice. It reminds me of Tamar Braxton, one of RCA Inspirations artists, who has under construction her podcast.
Yes.
That, just really talks about her journey. And then, you have her music to couple with that. So it's really that connection with the fans, like from all aspects. But we've talked a lot today about the changing ways people find and listen to music. So what does that mean for genres outside of the biggest ones like pop, rap, and country? So how do people find inspirational music and gospel music today? Asking for myself and my mom and my grandma.
Okay. We're constantly evaluating ways to create discovery, which ultimately should lead to consumption. That's why we're all doing this, right? So, but one of those, the visual is key, as we touched on earlier in the conversation. Having that right presentations, let me go back, starting with the right song. Let's go there, having the right song, the right artist, but the visual presentation. We're partnering with the DSPs to explore a variety of ways to, whether it's playlisting editorial support or creating additional content to make our titles stand out from our competitors. And so that's something super important. Television is another thing for inspirational music that we've seen. It's a way to create awareness. So whether it's a mainstream Good Morning America appearance or something like the Stellar Award. So, it's a wide range, or the Grammys. So we're fortunate enough to, have a lot of televised opportunities, which helps create awareness.
Sunday's best.
Sunday's best. There you go. So, then, again, and I feel like the more we build out podcasts, I just saw a recent study how podcasts is really a source for a lot of music discovery. So I'm really exploring some ways there with new podcasts that we're launching as a company to just test that theory out even further. Just finding those unique ways to just create the awareness. And it's not easy. And partnering with artists like Tamar Braxton, who's a mainstream artist who has a mainstream footprint that can kind of shine more light and bring more attention to the inspirational genre. So, working on that with Tamar, but I'm also working on something for Christmas with the Queen of Christmas. You know who that is. So again, that's going to get a certain level of attention because of who it is. So that, there's a number of ways, but really just trying to find great content and finding those ways to properly, people feel like exploit. When you say exploit, it's not a bad thing, but how do we maximize and further expose our music? And it's just it's ever changing. And so we're just constantly every day, of course, digital marketing is a way, but it's ever changing. But television, expanding our DSP strategy. And I would say just really continue to be more aggressive on the digital marketing side. And for gospel specifically, we've really seen a lot of opportunity internationally. So we're seeing interest from Africa, as well as the Philippines and other territories around the world that have really, stepped up and really say, hey, you know what, we're interested in this genre of music. It's clean, it's family friendly. So a lot of opportunity.
By the way, something to add to what Phil's saying is, yes, record labels have evolved and we're doing a lot more, and we can do it all, like put out a book or a feature film or do television. I think the key thing though is artists want to do it with us. Artists do have choices, but they want to do it with us because they realize that their team at the label have their back. They know them so well, and we already know how to lay some good groundwork so that when the artist comes in to execute that vertical, there's a team there already executing it for them. So it's the artist wants to do it with us, I think is key.
Cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Janine, one more vertical that I oftentimes we can't forget about, and I think everyone on the panel would agree, sync opportunities. That's been another way that we've been able to expose our music by way of commercials or television films or docs.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot more traction for our genre and a lot of films and television shows. I'm putting our songs in everything from VH1 weekly series and, to big budget films. So that's been yet another driver, and the Shazams prove that. So.
So, for sure.
Yeah.
When I think of, oh my goodness, when I think of Lizzo's career and what being in, on Netflix and like having that song kind of just grow out of a movie. It's just such a huge avenue as well. And I just want to go back for the one or two people who might be scratching their heads. Mariah Carey, Mimi, Queen of Christmas. Yes.
That is the Queen of Christmas.
Yes,
we have something special for the holidays coming very, very soon from the Queen of Christmas. Yeah.
Awesome. So you talk a lot about preserving the legacy of Black music, and just make that concrete for us. What can leaders in the music business today do to sustain Black creativity and to honor the contributions of the past and build a greater future for tomorrow?
Great question, Janine. I mean, Black music is the foundation for every genre of music. I mean, going back to gospel, which turned into jazz, into the blues, which then, country and everything was derived. So, Black music is American music. And that's something that I always remind everyone. And, here in Nashville, where I'm based, we have the National Museum of African American Music, which I sit on the board for, but it's a great institution that really just reminds you of the musical legacy of American music. And as a part of that legacy, it's important to make sure that the music industry landscape from an executive point of view is also represented. Again, I believe in having the most diverse workforce and making sure that people who are experts in various genres of music are also, prominently featured and in the C-suite where possible. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth within our industry, and just knowing how prominent, R&B, hip hop, and other genres have been for many years. It's super important to just kind of have the right representation and people that can also share the vision with the artist and execute it accordingly.
Nice. And you saying that makes me think back to Ken Burns's documentary Country Music. And I had no idea. I knew about Black music with rock and roll and all of that, but just the roots in country music, that really blew my mind. So true.
And so it's important just to, uphold the legacy and integrity. It just, it's super important because, again, people, we want to separate and say Black music, but Black music is American music. That's something that I always just tell everyone and encourage you. If you haven't seen the museum, just please check it out. But it will show you a lot of just facts and connect the dots and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that this person was inspired by or influenced by. And it's great. But, Black music is American music.
Absolutely. And so let's now go to the big picture. I am going to Michelle Ballantyne. Hi, how are you over there?
Hi, I'm fine.
So you represent record labels in Washington, D.C.
That's
So
right.
what do you wish policymakers understood just better about what record labels do today?
So I think that one thing that's so important is that people should understand that the music business is not staying still. It's constantly evolving, and so are record labels. And this is like a perfect example of that. When you hear about all the different opportunities and the different ways that we can help folks realize their vision. I made some notes about what everyone was talking about. It's so hard to I'm just going to try and tie it all together because everyone here has been so great talking about their experiences and what they do as their job. But I think partnership is really key. And I think Jesse would agree with that, but also Chris and Michelle and Phil, that's what we do in our jobs, right? It's partnership. And the idea of creativity and thinking about the big picture and making sure that people understand that the artist's voice is authentic. We help to communicate all of that and break through the clutter and just make sure that people are able to express themselves. And then lastly, the humanity aspect. We're all in it together. And that works. That's all of the music ecosystem, right? I mean, we can't be successful without our artists. Social media companies and platforms and streaming companies, they all have to have artists and the music. They rely on that to be successful. And then the fans also rely on all the different ways that they can get music. So it would, for me, what would be perfect is if Jessie would come to Washington and talk about her experience. We are always trying to rope people in to come and talk to policymakers. Chris knows that, she's been here, and Phil knows that because we've had people in Nashville along with us, and Michelle will get roped in anyway just because. But we just want to make sure that everyone understands what it means to be in a modern record label today, and those are all key parts of it.
Yeah. And so just take me into that landscape, because Congress seems so polarized.
Yeah.
It is polarized.
It is.
That way. And gridlocked. So is that a problem for the music industry at all? Like, how does that affect what you're doing?
Well, on the daily basis, it doesn't, because our issues are very bipartisan, and we're lucky about that. The committees that we go to lobby and advocate for artists and labels are committees that hear some of the most divisive and polarizing pieces of business, including, guns and judicial issues and social justice reform. And so we go to them and talk to them about music. Like, how lucky are we, right? We get to talk about music that touches everyone. And so, we rarely have a problem getting people to act in a bipartisan way, because they all care about music. And one thing that is so true, and I think everyone here knows that, is that you can't get anything done in Washington unless you come with a unified message. So we are really, really lucky that we can do that.
Nice. And then what would you say is one of those issues that has just been at the forefront for you, and you've been able to kind of make some headway?
Okay, so the Music Modernization Act was just the most recent piece of copyright legislation that's been passed. It helps artists, labels, everyone in the songwriter community, publishers. So it's a piece of legislation that we all had different issues in it that we wanted to get done. Every community, every aspect of the community in the music ecosystem had pieces of it that they wanted to get passed, but we actually were able to come together and go together hand in hand as a united music community, and that was how we managed to get it done. Right. And nice. It was like a lot of calls and lobbying, and can you talk to this member? Can you ask this artist to talk to that member? Can you get the publisher or the songwriter? But we all were in it together, and that's how we got things done. And that's just such an important message. It sounds maybe a little bit cheesy or old fashioned, but it really is important. Like, that is how you achieve change in Washington. And all over, actually. So the Music Modernization Act was the most recent piece. Other things that we've been involved in lately, though, that we weren't expecting to be involved in, is social justice reform. We got together with artists and label executives and folks who work at our labels, and they said, we really want to make our voices heard on this. And one thing that we're lucky about at RAA is that we know how to go and talk to the folks, right? And how to make the connections. And the same for helping our friends in the live business, the independent venues who have suffered so much through COVID, and also COVID relief. So all of these things where we try to work together with others, but help make the connections so that people can see, like, here's where we need help, here's where we need action.
Yeah. And you were kind of pointing to Jessie there. So I just want to talk a lot about how, how do artists help the RIAA with its work, and how do you kind of garner that star power to your ends?
So
sorry, I thought you were asking me. I was like,
no, I'm happy to answer that question. Although I think everyone on the panel can certainly speak to it as well. Members of Congress are just like everybody else. They love music. They love artists, and where artists can help is coming and coming to town if they can, or when it's safe, or when, but also by making phone calls or sending letters or tweeting at people. I mean, artists' engagement can make a big difference for everyone in our music ecosystem, including the artists. So we encourage that when people are willing and when it's appropriate. And it's kind of fun and interesting for people to see a different way of business, a different side of life. You know, DC has its own tricky intricacies that we try to help people navigate, but artists really can make a difference for our industry by getting involved, you know, where it suits them. So we encourage that, and we always try to rope people in. And like I said, Chris knows that because we've dragged her here a couple times, more than a couple of times, to come and talk to members of Congress about what she does in her job. And that's a way for everyone here, everyone who works in the music business, who works at a label, to explain, like, here's what I do. You know, I always make this joke about how members of Congress find it very useful to hear from real people, in quotes, right? Real people is what we used to have on the presidential schedule, when you would have someone who actually lived in that town or was affected by that issue. And we used to call them real people, TBD, to be determined. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it makes a difference, though, because they'll listen. They're tired of talking to us, who we go see them all the time. We call them all the time here in DC. But when you get someone who can really speak to it as a personal and deeply important matter, then it makes a difference. It does move the needle.
That's making me think of Olivia Rodrigo, who was standing up there.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. That's a perfect example with the push to get people vaccinated. That's a perfect example. But you know, when someone can come and explain what they do as articulately as Jesse, and explain, like, here's what it was like for me, and here was my experience, and here's why this made a difference for me, it really does matter.
Awesome. Well, we are getting down to the wire, but there are a few just maybe rapid fire questions, and anyone can weigh in or raise your hand. One of them is, you know, what is new in the business that really is just kind of like pushing your education, your knowledge? Is it, you know, social apps, NFTs? Like, what's something that you are really kind of consumed with right now, getting your head around in the music business?
Yeah, we have a lot of data. I don't know if there's anything specific for me. It's just we have so much data on so many things, and it's really figuring out how to use it, you know, how to use it to put out music at the right time, to again, elevate something at just the right moment. It just, that stuff is constantly changing. So we're lucky at Warner. We have incredible tools and tech, but we've got to really drill down and figure out what to do with all of it, you know?
For sure. What about this question about, you know, the zero-sum competition between labels and artists, or that old idea? Like, has that changed completely in that the label succeeds now when the artists and their work succeed? Or, you know, and how has that changed?
We're partners with the artists. Like, I mean, and again, when the artist wins, we win as a label. And a lot of our deals now reflect a winning formula. And it's, you know, we all have all types of structures and licensing and profit shares and so forth, but we're incentivized for success. And I think it's important that, you know, we all share in the profits and share in the revenue, and our artists work hard and their teams work hard, and as do our teams work hard. And we're all, at the end of the day, I look at it as one collective team. And I love the idea of having our creators having ownership, you know, and I understand the, you know, economics, and I work for a label and I'm proud to, but it's refreshing to see some of the new deal structures and models that are coming into play. So it incentivizes our partners / artists. That's why I call them partners, for success and want to work hard. So it's a win-win for us all when we have a hit record and we can go to the RIAA and say, I got a certification for a platinum. But y'all do so much more than that. But that's one of the many things that our friends at the RIAA, you know,
we love doing that. We love doing that. Celebrating artist success is something that's so important to us, and we love it.
Absolutely.
Right. All right, one more in the rapid fire. How about this shift to digital, like, or this, you know, this, I guess, idea that maybe it's easier now for record labels because you guys aren't shipping CDs and pressing records and doing all that. It's just, it's on streaming services or whatever it is.
Hold on, Janine. Hold on, one correction, and Michelle, back me up on this.
Yeah,
Vinyl, we're seeing a resurgence. I mean, it's growing year over year. So
that's true.
We are still pressing records.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
That's true. I've gotten a couple, which I covet. I love them.
The truth, Janine, is
I think that would be a mistake. Oh, sorry, Michelle. You go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say the truth is vinyl feels hotter than ever, but the production timeline to make vinyl is so long because there are so few vinyl factories out there. So, if an artist wants vinyl, they need to know what that packaging looks like 16 weeks in advance.
Wow.
That's 4 months that they have to sit and wait for their music to come out. So it's a whole thing. Shift to digital.
So you guys are doing the old stuff and the new stuff.
Yeah.
It's even harder. It's even harder these days.
And the volume of the new stuff, Michelle. Oh, sorry, Jesse. Now I jumped on.
No,
you.
I was just gonna say I think it's a mistake to take that away completely. Being able to go in and get a physical product from your favorite artist. I think we're going to see a wave of this new generation wanting to get out and go in physical stores and have an experience. The people younger than us were born into having everything online and digital. They're used to it. We're still so amazed that we can get everything online, but these young kids were born having it. My kids are not phased that they can press the button. They want to go out and do something physical. So my last record that came out 3 years ago, 60% of my sales were from Target because they wanted to go buy my album. It was unheard of. My album sold out the first day in Target because they underestimated my fans wanting to go and purchase it and have that experience to go hold that album up and go, I got this today. And so I think it's a huge mistake. I don't know if it'll be CDs. I don't know what it'll be, but I think getting rid of that physical product will be a mistake because I think it's going to make a comeback in some way.
That is so true.
We are having so much fun working with artists now and their D2C and what all that physical looks like. And by the way, Jesse, I texted my coworker that I'm on a panel with you, and she is freaking out. She's like, tell her I love her with 10 caps. So lots of fans.
That's how I said hi.
Awesome. And just even you talking about that, it makes me think back of buying Bills, Destiny's Child when I went up the street to Warehouse and got that CD. Oh my goodness. You guys, this has been so awesome. And I just want to thank you all for your insight. I have learned, as you were saying earlier, Phil, I've learned so much by listening to all of you. And I hope everyone watching has as well.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Chanel Ward, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Take-Two Interactive. I want to welcome you to TheGrill's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Gaming Roundtable presented by Take-Two. So I want to get into this discussion. We're going to get right into it and bring out and introduce our panelists, right? We're eager for this conversation. First, we have Gordon Bellamy, founder of Gay Gaming Professionals. Hi, Gordon. It's a pleasure.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Then we have Jim Huntley. Jim is professor and head of marketing at USC Games. Hi, Jim.
Hello. How's it going? Glad to be here.
Awesome. Layla Shabir, founder of Girls Make Games. Hi, Layla.
Hi. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Susanna Pollock, president of Games for Change. Hi, Susanna. And then last but certainly not least, we have Janina Gavinkar, filmmaker, actor, and consultant, gaming consultant, that is. Right? Great. So it is so fantastic to be in company, to spend some time today. I want to hop right into it. And I want to kind of frame this conversation around the evolution of interactive entertainment, right? How has it evolved over the past 40 years from being born, right, as we all know, out of the toy industry to becoming today's most popular and successful form of entertainment around the world? Here's the question. What do we want to demystify about gaming, the industry at large, and its transferability?
It's interesting, Chanel, that you said it was born out of the toy industry, because I come into it out of the television industry. And for me, what attracted me to the games sector was the fact that I saw games as a platform for storytelling in the 21st century. Like, it is the platform for storytelling. So yes, it's a toy. Yes, it's an interactive experience, but it's also such a strong platform for telling incredible, immersive, and important stories. And I just wanted to get that out there.
Absolutely. And I'm coming from the other direction. I did come from the toy industry, even though I've been a gamer all my life. I worked at Mattel before coming to THQ. And we all remember playing with action figures and dolls and, tabletop games when we were a kid and building these stories around what we were doing physically. And we all remember Saturday morning cartoons. And to me, gaming is basically the marriage of those two things. It's a way to give a player or a child agency to be able to have an interactive experience that feels like unique to themselves, but also to have fun with toys that are laid out and play with other people and play with cool things that you can see on your TV screen.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else?
I think for me, definitely gaming used to be something that I played as a child. So it's interesting. I wanted to talk about how, for me, there was a huge jump. I played games, my Atari 2600. It was part of the big pile of toys that I had. And then fast forward like 20 something years, I hadn't played a game since. And the medium had evolved so much that it was almost unrecognizable. And that was sort of like the pull for me coming in, being like, it's almost like magic when you see it after such a long time. There were these tiny pixels on the screen, and now it's these rich, immersive worlds, these stories that are, influencing not just people playing them, but society at large. And I think that's what's most compelling to me about the games industry, how impactful it is.
Ms. Shabir, we must have had very different parents, because I did not, nor was I allowed to have any sort of gaming in my childhood at all. But in terms of demystifying it for the next generation, right? I think there's a few things that we really need to let everybody know. One, you don't need to be able to code to be incredibly valuable to the games industry. Two, you don't need to be a dude, for sure. That's for sure. There's so much space for you. I promise you will find it. And what else? Three, games don't just exist on consoles, right? So if you have somebody in your life, if you're watching this panel, you're probably interested in the games industry already. I want to urge you to see even more space for yourself in the world of mobile games, in the world of, there's just VR, literally so many things, and they don't just live on consoles. And there's also beautiful stories being told in the mobile space as well, in the indie mobile space specifically. Yeah. Florence, for example.
I'll just jump in. I think a way that games have evolved is where the conversation is centered. When I was coming up, games, whether they be video games or board games or even television, were around a set of shared rules that were externally created. And we would all choose to jump into those worlds together for a certain amount of time and follow those rules. Today, the ownership of that rule set and of those identities has been democratized, where I and you and you and you bring so much of yourself to a game, whether it be through the character you create, through the device that you play it on, through the stories that you tell through your play. And so today, I think, especially for young people coming into games, it is as much a form of expression as it is a form of like shared experience and play. So when I think about like back in the day, like hopscotch, patty cake, whatever you played as kids, Foursquare, it was about the game and the rules. It wasn't as much like, let me bring myself to you and share myself with you across these devices, playing, talking, customizing, communicating. And so I think games, like what even means to young people, is very different than maybe what it means to some of us who came along in the past millennium.
I want to add to that just a little bit, because Layla also said something about games are no longer just consoles, right? And games are, you can play it across multiple devices, whether it's whether it's mobile, it's on your PC, but games are also not just for young people. And that the average age of the gamer is aging up, and the Entertainment Software Association, produces their essential facts, and I may get it wrong, but you have, I think the average age of a gamer is 33 or 34 right now, and nearly 46% of them are women. So you have a form of media that is reaching audiences of all different ages, from different backgrounds and around the world. So it truly has become this ubiquitous form of media that serves so many different audiences. And I think that's really important to remember.
I think I just have a funny anecdote about my parents. They're from Pakistan. And the first time I told them that I joined the games industry, they were just like, you're throwing like your MIT degree away. Like, you're just going to be making what? Like, that's nonsense. And fast forward a few years, they were visiting when Pokemon Go came out, and they saw everyone outside because they had the same stereotype of like gamers, just, mom's basement and what I was doing. I was stuck to my computer for a long time, but with Pokemon Go, we all went out and they called them Pokemon. We all went out and we had
taking the word back.
And so like the definition of what a video game is just keeps evolving, and I think that's such a beauty of it. And I feel so fortunate to have found this little club that we're a part of. So yeah, I think a lot of things that need to be demystified, but one of those huge ones is, you have no idea what's going on.
That's a great one to jump on, because that's the other thing we want to demystify. You can learn how to do this in a school. Oh wait, which school? Oh, there we go. So we have the number. USC has the #1 games program. We've been #1 for almost the full last 15 years. The Princeton Review rating. So when I talk to parents about, hey, your son or daughter may want to consider our program, they're like, you can learn games in college? Like, yeah, no, we have degrees, there's 3 6-figure jobs. Take-Two Interactive, I'm sure, would hire some really great talented people. And what we're looking for is more diversity. We want more voices, we want more variation, we want new stories that we can talk about.
Yeah, the value chain has changed. So going once again back to games as we played them growing up, I thought all games were made by Milton Bradley. Okay, that's who made games. And no, so I didn't self-identify, right, as someone who could author or own, right? I could only consume. I can consume games. I love to play games, right? You see the work that Leila's doing. It literally says right there. It's in the name. Girls make games. That is meaningful. Okay, that is powerful, as far as what it could mean to parents, to families. The work Susanna's been doing forever. Obviously, Jim, there at USC, super excited about the Lawson Fund. I hope you're going to talk about that too. Everybody involved. But like moving people up the chain from consumption to ownership is something that has happened that needs to be demystified about games, right? That games can be owned, games can be created, games can be distributed, not just played, and thus perhaps to parents of the future, a different relationship with what games could mean to their children.
Okay, great. So we're going to move on to our second question. Thank you for your robust responses for our opening question. Question number 2. What does diversity and inclusion in our industry require us to consider beyond representation, right? Beyond having diverse candidates and creators, what else does it ask us to consider?
The first thing we need to look at as D and I, which are 2 very popular letters of the alphabet right now, but they mean diversity and inclusion. You gotta include the people that you're inviting to this party. It's just gonna make more things dope. And the other thing is we have to all ask ourselves what representation really means. I think something that happens a lot in the last few years is that it sort of stops at the faces on screen. And what happens when you are a person who has been othered your whole life for various reasons, you might see a character that looks like you, but then they start talking. And you can tell that they are not being written for or produced or supported by people like you. And it is a very strange emotional uncanny valley that happens. And it is not sustainable. So representation has to extend past those faces or face scans or whatever you want to say that are on screen. It's just got to be more. But by the way, it's happening. So much has changed. We are in an incredible place compared to where we were even 5 years ago, but we ain't there yet. So that means, and like everybody's in on it. It's not like people are like, oh no, we want to keep the things the way they were. No, everybody's here to make better stories, better games, better experiences. But it is going to take time, and it's going to take people having the courage to speak up. So just do it, have the courage to speak up. And if you do it with some compassion in your heart, knowing that we are in the generation that gets to change things, which is very exciting, then people will receive it with a hug, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say something that's changing in language is the word belonging has been added. And to me, belonging, it's like this panel, right? Any one of us could be included in the grill in some panel because we're all outstanding in our own ways. Belonging is when you're able to include others, right? Chanel, you bringing us together to have a talk is what the real change is. We've all been on panels before, all our lot, 20 years, 25 years, right? But this conversation is belonging, which is a different thing. And that's something throughout media. We've all been in rooms. You were just talking about it. You talked your way into a room, you didn't feel like you belonged there. But isn't it better when it's your room and you decide who's in there, who gets a coffee, who gets a croissant, right? That is what is transformative, right? You get to open and close the door. Come on in. Until then, right, it is diversity is observed versus diversity is empowered, which are two really, you know it, you were just talking about it. You know it when you feel it, right? When this is like, oh, look, let me observe you. Representation. That it might get flipped off in a second is very different than empowered belonging.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's, go ahead, Jim.
No, please go for it, Susanna.
Well, I was going to say that there's also a lever that needs to be shifted, or a different mindset, in that, you know, first of all, I agree everything you said about belonging. I think that's really, really important. That which also brings a lot of people to playing games, right? Is that sense of belonging and having community and being part of a culture and being able to identify and create self-identity in that environment. But there's also recognition that there's a diversification of audiences that are driving this huge economic industry, and they have value. And games can be created and recognized for those people who are making decisions whether to buy or not buy a game. And there's power in that. I recently was talking to Mark Barley, who is the CEO of Able Gamers, which represents people with disabilities. And he said for him, a big turning point with him in the industry was the fact that he was able to articulate that 46 million Americans have some kind of disability. And these are people who self-identify as gamers. They over-index as gamers because it's a place where they can find that belonging, that sense of belonging. And they have purchasing power. And there needs to be changes, and there are being changes in terms of accessibility in gaming. But that's something to, you know, that's a card that we all hold on to. And I think, I don't know if it's a skeptic in me, but can be a real driver for making change in the industry.
For sure. It's like if you want to be an altruist, you can say this is just the right thing to do. And if you want to be an asshole and be fully about your capitalism, you can be like, new buyers, duh. Why is this just?
It just makes sense.
Same outcome. It makes sense.
Yeah. You spoke a bit about the uncanny valley, and I think there's an uncanny valley which exists in most contexts for diversity, which is from when you can count, and by that I mean like until when you can't. So, for example, Susanna runs Games for Change, and if I was like for gender equity, how many speakers do not identify as male at Games for Change? I can no longer count them. Right? I can't count them because it's in the batter. But before in other conferences, you'd be like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. And at some point, there is this uncanny valley, which you have to cross, right? I don't know how many girls make games. Well, I hope all of them, right? Right? Like, but I'm sure in the past there have been games programs where you're like, we've got 3 young ladies, or
the best,
14,
the
right?
thing that excites me, the thing that excites me the most about this little part of this conversation is that all of us are so old. We are all talking in such binary gender language right now. In about 2 minutes, all these kids are going to be like, what are these girl bullshit? Like, who cares? We don't care. It's changing so quickly, and it's really exciting because it's just going to grow the industry and it's going to give us more experiences.
Right.
Thank you. So I want to, and Layla, this was kind of divine. I have another question. I want to start with you, and then I want to make sure that Jim gets some airtime because I feel like there were some moments. Sure. So what stories should we be telling? What stories are we not telling that we may or may not be ready to hear?
So I'm not sure about ready to hear or not, but I know for sure the stories that we tell, the stories that come out of our summer camps, for example, we run summer camps for kids ages 8 through 18. So these are essentially young girls who, like we were talking about, being the only girl in the room. For them, it's been their whole experience so far. They're 15, 16, 18. And when they come to camp for the first time, this is the one place where they look around and they feel validated because people look like themselves. So I think the stories that we need to tell are the stories these kids are telling. And like Janina pointed out, gender, what gender? I mean, what girls, boys? The stories these kids are coming up with are stories we haven't imagined because we haven't lived those lives. And I think the only way we can get to those stories is to empower these kids and the next generation with the right tools to be able to build the games and to express themselves in that way. I wanted to, touch a little bit on the representation point. I think it's really important to think about rooms, like Janina mentioned, rooms where decisions are being made. If we have diverse people, if we have true representation, and we're not talking gender, sexual, we're talking like economic class, we're talking people who play or don't play games, people who identify as gamers or non-gamers. I mean, one of the things that I'm really big advocate for is getting people who don't identify as gamers to come join the industry and help us build it, because gaming is not just for people who identify as gamers. Video games impact us whether we play them or not. Believe it or not, whether we play them or not, they're going to impact us because they're building the society we live in. They're building the future that we live in. So the stories that we need to tell are going to unfold in a way that I personally can't anticipate, because every year at the end of camp, we read the game summaries that the kids come up with. And I'm sure Susanna has had a similar experience where she's just like, how are the kids thinking of this stuff? When I was 10, I was eating sand, at the desert. So how are these kids thinking about climate change at this young age, or thinking about, with the world I want to live in, empathy that I want to build in the player? They're thinking about such complex topics that we only get to realize as adults because we've faced them. A lot of times we'll end up telling stories that we've experienced, or if we've gone through some obstacle in our life, we're like, oh, I understand what it's like to lose a loved one because I went through that. But here are kids who haven't even stepped out of their homes trying to imagine what it's like to be a different person. And I think that's what's really exciting to me about giving kids that ownership of making their own games.
So yeah, just to build on that, and I'd even say part of the previous question's answer, the D and the I, the middle part is the E, the equity. And that's what we're focused on in USC Games, is looking for solutions to solve this problem that are specific to the groups that we want to appeal to. So the challenge that we have, we've been 50% or over 50% male, female and non-binary for the last decade or so. So we've been diverse before diverse was cool, way back in the day. So we eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. Where we're going now is like, how do we improve our racial diversity? We're in pretty good shape versus the rest of the campus, and USC is in pretty good shape versus other schools around the country, but there's still room to grow when it comes to representation for Black and Native American gaming professionals. So that's where the Lawson Fund comes in, that we started this last April in partnership with Take-Two Interactive, where it's named after Gerald A. Lawson, who is a famous Black engineer that created the removable game cartridge, the technology that our entire industry is built upon right now. We named it in honor of him because we really want to focus scholarship support, financial support for Black and Native American students. Because when you look at history and statistics, those those demographics have stubbornly not moved up at all in the last 15 or 20 years since it's been measured. So we really want to do our part to not only give Black and Indigenous students a leg up and an opportunity to get into our #1 ranked games program, but also down the road work our way backwards on the value chain. To Gordon's point, how do we like help students in junior high and high school even open their minds to like, whoa, I can have a job doing this. I had no idea. And even further back in grade school, where a lot of the inequities start to kick in grade school because, hey, I don't have access to a computer lab. I don't have access to computer science instruction. I don't have access to a lot of the stuff that the more Tony'd and I'd say invested upon schools do. How do we fill that gap so that we can make sure those students way back in grade school have the option to even think about going down this path, and then have opportunities to actually take that path and get into what really is STEAM. We talk about games as though it's this weird, thing that's away from everything else, but it's a STEAM discipline. It's tech and art. When it's all said and done, it's probably, I would say, one of the purest expressions of STEAM, because all those things have to work together to come up with a really awesome game concept that people enjoy playing. So we really want to make sure that we're helping out on the value chain leading up to our program and college age. And then also, if we do that, we feel like the industry is primed to take those students who are highly trained and extremely engaged and focused in working in the industry and giving them job opportunities.
Awesome. Susanna, am I sensing you want to add?
I do. I want to build on what Jim was talking about, because we're focused a lot on reaching those middle and high school students, just what you're saying, about trying to get them to understand that they can become creators and not just consumers of this very popular form of media. And working in mostly Title I schools, so those are schools that qualify for free or reduced lunch, we are able to demonstrate to these young people that, one, they can gain skills, right? You're right about the STEAM versus STEM. Yes, they are learning early, computational thinking and computer programming. But more importantly, I think, honestly, is the 21st century skills. They're learning how to become critical thinkers and problem solvers and collaborate with one another, and realize that they can bring their own talents, even if it's designing characters, or it's writing scripts, or coming up with music, or doing research on a social impact theme because they want to make a game about climate change. Yep. They have something to bring to the table. And if we can inspire them at age as 10, 11, 12, and give them like an opportunity to go through a sequential program, which we see kids participating 6, 7 years in a row, and then saying, oh my gosh, I could go to college for this. Like, there are programs like USC, there are scholarships available to me. To me, that's the investment, the long-term investment that I think is needed. Yeah. From support from the industry, like Take-Two, they support this program. These kids are getting scholarships, for participating. But more, that's supporting everybody. Talk about pipeline development. Then we're destined to get that kind of representation in the industry.
100%. That's exactly what our focus is, and we're lockstep in that regard. And it's great to see companies like Take-Two to be the vanguard of investing in it. And we're looking for more industry partners to come online and help, put their backs into it and help move this along.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You sort of talked about what are the questions that you may not want, that we weren't ready to hear, right? And the industry as abstraction, right? Capitalism, right? I think that when you think about the outcomes for youth, there's a slider bar between cultivating value and harvesting value, simply put, right? You're either more valuable through the industry, you're being cultivated, whether it be through academia, through Girls Make Games, Games for Change, right? All these programs being cultivated to be industry, or you're being harvested. Like, oh, you gave me $60. Like, thank you. Thank you for your time and money. And it's a really challenging question, right, to ask when you look, right, at the people of the world. What do I want for you as an outcome? Okay, that's hard, right? I think a second question, which is going to be hard, is that these young people have been connected as default. So unlike us, unlike don't talk to strangers, blah, 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 they validate themselves through connection, through as many followers and likes and interactions as possible from a very, very, very young age. That is default. And so what games even mean and are to them as a payoff, as a satisfying experience, It's going to be a question that older people are not going to grok in the same way ever, right? Because we didn't have a cell phone when you were 12 years old, 10 years old, whatever, forever, right? You didn't have the likes of your junior high vacation. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a real thing. And so a real hard question, it will be, what will games mean to a globally connected generation of people as they come of age as adults?
So I want to say, and I believe so much of our social identities are social constructs. And what I'm hearing in these conversations is deconstruction, right? What are we deconstructing? So what comes top of mind, and how does, innovation and advancement relate to deconstruction when it comes to the gaming industry?
Oof, man.
Oof.
I would, sorry. I was just going to say, one thing that, I love the fact that we're a young country, but we have a short memory. In 2018, Black Panther came out, and right up until 2018, everyone was wringing their hands in gaming and Hollywood and everywhere else in entertainment. I don't know, all black cast I'm not sure if that's going to do well in the box office. And now we're, just saw Legend of the Ten Rings. Like this, the economic opportunity, and Janina hit the nail on the head. I am a capitalist, but I'm not hardcore, and I do believe in fettered capitalism with some controls on it. But it needs to be a question about commercial opportunity, and how do we build in diversity and equity into what I used to get reviewed on and bonused on, which is, what are some objective, measurable goals that we can chase and pursue, and really deconstruct what normally we're evaluated by and bonused on, which is, did you drive profit? I drove profit. Did you control your costs? Control costs. Boom, you get a bonus. How about how many people of color did you interview? We're not talking quotas. A lot of people come to me in USC and say, I'm looking for African-American coders, designers, whatever, but I can't find them. Like, well, what are you doing differently than what you used to do before from a hiring perspective? Well, nothing. Well, there you go. So if you've done nothing to change the pool you're hiring from and the people you're looking at to take those roles, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to talk to anyone different. So you do need to start expanding your circle of from a pipeline perspective, from a talent perspective. Look at different opportunities and different audiences of people to tap into to take some of those roles, and at least
also
consider
just look at your friends.
Yeah.
Who do you hang out with? Just in your daily life? Get some new friends. Diversify your life, and you will find everything will diversify very quickly after. Just build it and they will come, friends. The other thing, speaking of success, that I wanted to piggyback on, I started my life in Hollywood. I say it with quotes because Hollywood is an industry, it is not a place. And when I'm trying to sort of talk to Hollywood about the games industry, I always say it's very parallel to feature films. There are the $100 million films, there are AAA games, right? But there are those beautiful, artful, emotional, Oscar-winning films that are highly successful. We got that in games too. So everybody who's out there, please hear us when we say there is space for you, and you don't have to be making somebody else hundreds of millions of dollars to be of value in this beautiful industry.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that's really great, talking about diversifying wealth and ownership versus diversifying consumption.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone we talk about over-index for consuming all sorts of things that we don't own, right? And so, I mean, once again, even seeing this panel, right? Seeing a director and an executive and CEOs, right? Like, Susanna, you are Games for Change, because you change, like, you are the change you want to make, because decisions have to roll down from your office, right? Thank gosh, right? There's someone who does not identify as male running Girls Make Games. That itself, right, is the change. People seeing that they can aspire to run things helps them make smaller decisions in their own lives,
right?
Which are freedom, right? Which is what true diversity, equity, belonging looks like, when you are free, right, to do things, and someone isn't telling you what to do, when to do it, because that business model, we know how that ends up. That's been tried.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And so it is really just so important, like the programs that all of you are putting in place, right? To empower young people to know that they can decide, that they can lead, right? That they can own and create these positive experiences, or negative. Heck, create a negative experience. Create what you want. If you're free, like, right? Like every movie's not going to be Black Panther.
There are plenty of mediocre artists doing mediocre work that are getting a hell of a platform. Have the courage to make something mediocre too.
Yeah.
That's a success. That's how early we are in this journey.
Here's something to demystify about the industry, I think, and this is across the board. I feel and have observed that marginalized candidates only apply for jobs for which they are overqualified. And if they check every single box, then they will consider applying for it. But that is a myth. You would be surprised. There's this thing, it's called learning on the job. It's very popular in overrepresented populations where they will get the job and then just be in the spot and they'll be like, oh, there's training and this and that. And I'll just figure it out whilst in the ecosystem because of culture fit, right? I'm a good team player. I can, I'm additive. And I think that the earlier age that we could transform that perception that you have to be exceptional before you get in the door to even participate, right? That you got to kick a home run before you even swing your foot at the ball, right? That is going to be like the healthier future because we can't survive on exceptionalism, right? We can't, that's just what it sounds like. We need to build a culture of respect and value, right? Where everyone sees themselves as valuable coming in the door, and then they add their nuance and traits and, so on and so forth.
I've been in those meetings where usually I joke and say my entire career I've been the only Black guy in the boardroom, but I would walk into those meetings in Fortune 500 companies, and I would have exactly what Gordon said, the skills and the training and the experience specific to that company or that industry. And then I'd raise mine and say, have you ever thought about this? And people go, well, no, I hadn't. And you're like, okay, cool. That comes out from what makes you as an individual and your unique point of view. Trust me when I say, if you can bring your unique point of view and make the company money, you've got a job for life. And if you don't want a job for life, you certainly will find investors that will fund your idea and make that something you want to do for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love these conversations around value add. Right. How do we continue to add value into the spaces that we're working and designing and creating within? I want to get a sense of and I think it's really important for folks to have a sense of just how incredible games are in terms of their transferability. And Susanna, I want to come to you and ask you this question, right? How can games be used outside of entertainment, right? And Layla, I imagine you have some thoughts about this as well, as it relates to equity forward innovation and advancement, right? What does that look like from your unique positions?
So, I mean, the concept that games have a power beyond entertainment is the tenet of what Games for Change is all about. For almost 20 years now, we've been kind of touting that story and trying to getting more and more people on board within the games industry, and of course outside of the games industry, because the approach or the conceit that game mechanics and the attractiveness of engagement within a game lends itself very well to other disciplines, whether it's used in education, right? And it's a way to engage young people in the classroom, teaching math or social studies or the critical thinking skills or, difficult concepts. What a great way not only to engage kids and where they are, right? That's a big challenge that teachers have, particularly in this COVID, plus time period, right? With virtual learning, but the type of learning opportunities that games provide because of the depth of them, because of the agency that players have, gives them a different environment and different relationship with the material. Then there are other industries like the healthcare industry, or even the not-for-profit space, or training or in an industry in a commercial sense, where again games are a form of engagement that allows you to have a different interaction with whatever the content is. We're seeing so much happening in the healthcare space. It's super exciting. But also think about like social workspace or medical training, where you can use these mechanics to allow people to have access to types of education and experiences that they may not have in a physical or real setting. So there's actually, again, back to the economics of it, there's an economic advantage to using games in training because you can deliver them, digitally through to new employees. And you can design those experiences specific to audiences that you're onboarding, right? And to back to your question about like the DEI aspect, to me, it reminds me about the conversations, I've got a 16-year-old who's going to be taking the SATs. Right. And you've got all these issues for decades, right, about the inequities of the SATs. Well, think about the same conversations happening with AI, and the same conversation needs to be happening about games in all these other industries. It has to be considered when you're thinking about training for onboarding at big box stores, right? Whether it's virtual headsets that Walmart is using, or it's training of social care workers, or it's medical training for surgeries. Like all of that needs to be considered in the design of these games that are being used outside of entertainment.
Also, just the genre of using games to help mental health, right? So just that is an area that I would love
100%.
to see massive growth in. If there's anyone watching, if this is an area that is important to you, get to work because we need it.
Yeah.
And I heard there's a college that has a program that's focused on games and health and MFA. Oh, wait, it might be. We actually have an MFA in games and health within our program right now. So you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, touching on both the things you guys said, because that's sort of for me, looking at the kids that come to camp and the games they're making, I almost feel like I'm able to kind of look at the future because I'm just like, okay, this is what we're going to see more of because these kids are going to grow up and become developers. Huge interest in using games beyond entertainment. I mean, my entry into the games industry was for education. I wanted to make educational games for SAT vocabulary. My game's not out yet, Susanna, so your son can't use it because that was the killer for me, having to memorize those words. That made no sense. But same for games for mental health. We've had kids, a few years ago, we had a girl come in, make a game with dolphins in it. Her whole reason for making the game was her sibling with, I believe autism, loved dolphins, and she wanted to make a game for him so he would play it and calm down and feel better. We've had kids make games for their parents. We had a girl come in, make a game for her mom because she had just gone through a painful divorce and she just wanted to make something that she could play to recover from that. They're thinking about video games as a medium. They're not looking at the game itself as the end product where they just play it and have a great time. Right. There has to be something more to it, and I think that's really what we're going to start to see more and more of. And I really think that the stereotype of blow them ups or like button mashing and like, the first person shooters, the first FPSs for me was like the stereotype that kept me out of gaming for the longest time. And I know for most people, that's the case that keeps their kids out of gaming. And these are wildly popular genres, but it's still not the genre that all gamers play. For every popular game that's out there, not every gamer enjoys that game. I still can't get into Smash. It's so popular at camp. The kids want me to play with it. I don't know what to do with it. I just can't. One of the people I've been so lucky to be able to work with in recent years is Amy Hennig, legend status for a reason. And she says this thing sometimes, which is like, why do we have to beat a game? Why are we beating games? That's the only option, is to beat a game? Strange. So, and just like feature films, right? There are so many different genres of feature films. Sure, okay, if the studio keeps their lights on by making a big old shoot 'em up $100 million movie that looks like you're playing with G.I. Joes, great, fine, capitalism. But there are also, all these studios are supporting other genres because they know their importance.
Yeah, I think what you're all touching on are aesthetics of play. right? And so the same way in other media, you might go for learning or for collaboration, competition, of course, for great story progression. Games provide these bridges that people will need in parts of their lives, whether it be very personal, like around mental health, or spectrum, or just trying to make it through the day, but also professionally. If I want to develop and move forward, I want to train. I want to be more connected in my workplace. I want to learn to network, right? I want to, or even keep this job for a minute before the robots come, right? And games are going to be a part of that, right? That sort of ordered play. Has everyone tried TikTok? Has everyone been on TikTok? Mm-hmm. Right? And what they've done is very compelling, right? They're very compelling at serving you the next video. Okay. It's a very simple thing. You could certainly see a world, right, where someone could serve you the next interactive experience, big or small, right, to move you forward towards a learning goal or towards a peace of mind goal, or towards a, what I think is super important is that I think because games are connected across the globe, you'll be less likely to attack someone who is from a place with whom you've played a game. Simply put, like that might be the biggest thing of all. Like all the things which are like constructed by capitalism to divide us, whether it be faith, gender, nation state, race, blah, 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 blah. Games democratize that and remove those boundaries and create a shared bond unlike anything before it. Like in the history of ever, where not only did we play the same game, we actually were in the same game.
I love that idea, and I'd love to do a research project on looking at people's relationships around the globe and whether we all know that games are bringing people together. We've seen that over the past 18 months, right? Games have connected us. Games have put a social lifeline for people within families, and also connection for meeting new people when you're unable to do that in real life. That would be a fascinating setting. So I love that. But I also want to say something that I've been observing lately within my work is, we're out there and we often are working with a lot of not-for-profits, museums, people outside of the games industry who are interested in incorporating games into their work. Because as a not-for-profit, that's our focus is. And I've been seeing a lot of conversations about, yes, we'd like to make a game about climate change. How can we make a game about this? We want to raise awareness around this issue, or we want to attract donors, or we want to reach people in refugee camps. But what I'm also seeing a lot of is this conversation about game-like experiences, that we're talking about, like, people may call it the gamification of society, but that's not really what I'm talking about. We're not talking about creating loyalty programs. We're talking about game-like experiences that engage a consumer or engage a person in whatever, experience or whatever moment you want to have them have a deeper relationship with, like museums. We're working with 80 museums around the country because their education departments want to create game-like experiences, not even the education departments, all of them do, to attract a younger audience, to give them an opportunity to have a different relationship with the exhibits that they're seeing within a game-like experience, something with certain constructs around it, to give them purpose and a goal and a way to collaborate with others. And I think that is something we're going to see more and more across our society, that obviously is coming from games, from the pure board games, to the games industry. And there's going to be a lot more meshing of those worlds.
Right.
So I know we have to close really shortly, and I want to give, provide some. I know for some updates. So, I just want to center you all in the fantastic work that you are all doing, and we feel really privileged to have this space with you. So what are you most proud of as it relates to moving diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging forward, right? What are you most proud of that you're working on within your respective role and work currly?
None of us can talk about these things. We live in secret. Talk about Chanel.
Oh no!
All this stuff.
Yeah.
I can't tell you anything. I have signed my life away.
I will jump in because
no.
Well, no, I get to collaborate with Take Two. Thank you, Take Two, as well as everyone, and open to collaborate with everyone else. But the two things that we're proudest of, are one, our work on Twitch to give voice to equity. We just had our GGP honors, which is honoring the best in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and the work, the positive work which people are doing, and treating those people who are doing the positive work like they are of value, right, and deserve time, the same way people who are worthy of critique are getting lots of time, right? So I'm very proud of that. And we also have a GGP Scholars Program, which is for young people who do community service and are either studying to become game makers or to be content creators or work in and around esports in our craft. So those are the two things that I'm proud of.
Awesome.
I'll go. So I mentioned that as a non-for-profit, you know, we're out there trying to bring in more people from outside the industry into games and seeing how games can be used beyond entertainment. And as part of our work is to inspire the next generation of game designers. And that's the work that we've been doing with the Games for Change Student Challenge that has been running for 7 years now. And it's a program that has just really taken off. And we're seeing educators and students just loving the opportunity to bring games and game design to the classroom. So we're expanding into new cities. We work, across from LA to New York to Detroit. We're starting in Seattle and Pittsburgh, but we're also going internationally. And through and this is just so interesting, and through a relationship with the U.S. State Department, who sees games as a platform for diplomacy, is allowing us to adapt this program to become a virtual exchange program with youth in other countries, in Israel, in Bahrain, and Abu Dhabi. So we'll have middle schoolers in Abu Dhabi and Israel and Tel Aviv and Bahrain learning how to make games using our curriculum, and then partnering with kids in Detroit and Atlanta and New York and creating mini game studios. And yes, they're going to make things together, but it's a platform for cultural dialogue. And the fact that games can bring kids from across the world together and create and explore and have conversations and hopefully develop lifelong, relationships, I'm very proud of that.
Incredible.
I think definitely likewise for me, similar to what Susanna said, going virtual was one of those things where at first we were just like, we're just going to lose all the kids because, their parents are not going to want them to sit on a computer. They've been online schooling. They're not want to go to camp. But we made it global, and it ended up attracting kids from all over the world. And we had similar, student exchanges from like Moldova to Argentina to Bangladesh, kids joining in on the same Zoom classrooms, hanging out with kids from the US. I think it was about 79 cities around the world. And it's just a magical summer experience that just wrapped up. And kind of the summaries at the end of camp where they send us, what the camp experience was like for them, that they were all just like, I had no idea it would be this easy to become friends with someone from the US. So for the international students, because they see kids on TV and they think their culture is so different, but video games unite us, like that you love Pokemon in Pakistan and I love Pokemon in North Carolina, and we're the same people, so we can talk about the same things. And I think that's one of the beauties of video games is how much closer we all feel because of the experience we've had in the last 18 months. We're very proud of that. The other thing I'm really excited to share is that we have another program called the Girls Make Games Fellows, which is actually a program for students who are in game design or students who just graduated and they want to continue working in the industry. They get an opportunity to come teach at camp and also get a GDC pass and mentorship with folks like at Take-Two or other game industry companies. I'm really proud of being able to build that pipeline out because we start as young as 8. And so as the kids, I've actually had kids who started at 8 and are now in high school because the program just turned 8. So they're in high school and now they're looking at college. So we're looking at college scholarships and potentially a scholarship fund down the line. And obviously mentorship opportunities going forth. So we're here to build that pipeline. So if you know of kids who are girls or non-binary and they want to make games, send them to Girls Make Games. We'd love to welcome them.
Fantastic.
I'd say for me, it's definitely the Gerald A. Lawson Endowment Fund at USC, greenlighting that in April with Take-Two, and Microsoft just came on board in the last few weeks as well. We're looking for more partners. When the industry, because it's driven by capitalism, it reacts when there's a threat. And so when there is a crisis from a racial perspective in the country, my phone rings off the hook with people who want to help and partner. And then when things die down, the phone dies down and the calls stop coming. I would love for us to look at this as a perennial, long-term initiative that we're not only when there's a crisis, but also build it into our metrics and what we're from a performance perspective, what we're rewarding people for from a corporate perspective. Because if that's built into your objectives from an annual basis, trust me, I can tell you, as having those jobs, you will focus on making sure that happens because your personal money is dependent on you achieving that objective. So I would love to see how we can build the loss and fund pipeline, not just into the industry, but also back and work with, Gordon mentioned earlier, but every school on our university's campuses wants to partner with us. We are, from a program perspective, we're structured where we're shared between the Viterbi School of Engineering and the Cinematic School for the Arts at USC. But we work with the music school at Thornton. We work with the art school. We work with the med school, as I mentioned earlier. We also are starting to put a big initiative together with the communication school, and then the School of Education. It's one of those things where once someone can figure out that magic formula of training and learning with games, they're going to print money. Like the sector that's going to expand is going to blow up, because I think we all know it's not really a secret that our public school system across the country is struggling, and it's extremely uneven in terms of the resources it brings to bear, depending on the community. And gaming democratizes all of that. So we can figure out that amalgamation of, hey, I've got a fun way to educate people or educate children that they wouldn't even know that they're learning. The sky's the limit for that, and that's also what's going to help with our disequity, if you will.
Thank you, Jim.
I can really quickly say that the stuff that I'm most proud of, you'll see and play in the next 2 to 5 years. But I've been doing a lot of work in casting consultation and creative consultation at some major studios and some indie studios in the last few years. And the work they're doing is so beautiful. And it's not just because of who is cast and who they're choosing to be in these games. The change is here. It is happening. And I'm really proud to be the tiniest little part of it.
Beautiful. Well, that is our time. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your energy. Again, I am so thrilled to continue our partnership. We thank you for all that you do and continue to do. Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Steve Shapiro from City National Bank's Entertainment Division, and I thank you to everyone at TheWrap and all of our speakers who have worked so hard to make this year's event possible. I'm honored to welcome you all to today's roundtable discussion. At City National, we've been calling 2021 the year of recovery and optimism. Few sectors were hit as hard as entertainment, but today, the industry is back in action. Thanks to vaccines and easing restrictions, even live shows and sports are coming back in a big way. Seattle's new Climate Pledge Arena is due to open next month, and a lot of live music performances have already sold out for 2022. Earlier this month, mega hits like Hamilton, Wicked, and The Lion King reopened at full capacity. And football fans across the country are once again filling stadiums. This is great news, and not just for the industry. It's also important for companies that depend on new content from Hollywood, like toys, books, apparel, and other merchandise sales. It's also great news for City National. We've been here for the entertainment industry before and during the pandemic, and we're here for you now as we all move into the next normal. We're very proud of the work we've done to help shore up the entertainment industry during the pandemic. Thanks to the leadership of Martha Henderson, our entertainment banking division secured about 9,000 PPP loans worth more than $1.1 billion for clients. Without those funds, many entertainment companies from coast to coast may have been forced to close for good. But 2021 is the year of recovery and optimism. So now we're looking ahead and figuring out how the industry can meet the changing consumer preferences. A great example is video streaming, which, not surprisingly, really took off in 2020. According to PwC, the number of US streaming subscribers doubled last year, and Americans spend 75% more time streaming video. That means there's more need for content than ever before, and the industry is investing to keep up. For example, Netflix is projected to spend more than $17 billion on content this year, and Disney Plus is spending up to $9 billion a year over the next 3 years. That's a lot of money being pumped into content creation, so our panel is really timely. Our panelists will be talking about what the industry needs to do to get production ramped up and how we'll balance the need for content with keeping everyone healthy and safe. I'm really looking forward to their insights, and I hope you walk away with some ideas that will help guide you and your business forward. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Van. Welcome to the Producers Roundtable. And to kick it off, I'm going to toss it over to Stacy.
Okay, thanks, Van. I'm Stacy Scher. I'm a film and television producer, and I'm co-hosting with Van Toffler today.
Hi, I'm Van Toffler. I run a company called Gunpowder and Sky, and before that worked at the lovely MTV, ruining youth culture for a couple of decades.
I am Mary Viola. I'm the president of Wonderland Sound and Vision. We're a film and television production company, and our head is McGee, who's a director, and he and Van are responsible for ruining my youth with MTV. So thank you, Van.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brenda Gilbert. I'm president and co-founder of Braun Media Corporation. Very honored to be here amongst some wonderful panelists. We have produced as a company over 100 movies and executive produced with our studio partnerships.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Mike LaRocca. I founded Agbo with Joe and Anthony Russo, the Russo brothers, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, and we produce both film, television, and other.
I'm Jeff Flanagan. I'm Kevin Hart's business partner and CEO of his streaming network, Laugh Out Loud Productions.
Hi, I'm Duncan Crabtree-Ireland. I'm the National Executive Director of SAG-AFTRA, which, for anyone who might not know, that's the Screen Actors Guild and American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. And we're the union that represents performers working in front of the camera and behind the microphone in the entertainment industry in the US. Hi.
So Van, why don't we just start by asking everybody what they've been working on during COVID? Why don't we start with Brenda?
We've been very busy producing things at Braun Media Corporation across our companies. On the film side, we have filmed a movie called Solitary in Canada, another movie called Surrounded in the US, and another movie called Monkey Man in Indonesia. On our animation side of things, we actually launched a company called Braun Digital, supported and powered by Epic Games, using their Unreal game engine to be multi-purposable, so that we can use that for interactive games. So we have 2 premium animated series that are in production, post-production right now, and then one that we are going to be in production very, very soon. We also launched another company called Braun Life, which is our non-scripted sector of the company. So we're on production on multiple documentaries and docuseries, and we will be delivering to HBO the Nicki Minaj series later this year. We also have our TV group that has been incredibly busy, led by David DeVoli. We are filming currently Call My Agent, which is the British remake in the UK. We also we finished filming and wrapped in Italy on That Dirty Black Bag. And also we finished Kin in Ireland, and it debuted on AMC just last week. So we have been particularly busy with launching two labels, and then also incredibly busy on the film and the animation side of things.
I think Stacy's laughing because all she did was drink alcohol.
I did a little bit of that as well. So I'm not one to judge.
Pretty productive drunk.
Yeah. So on that note, with Van maligning my character, how about you, Jeff?
We've actually been also extremely busy during COVID. We were actually, I think, the guinea pig for the industry is that we produced Kevin Hart's Netflix stand-up special. We were the first production to basically ramp up with a live audience. which was over a year ago. And that was, obviously that was an experience because nobody had done anything with a live audience. So what we did, we actually recreated. Typically Kevin Hart does big arena shows, but we kind of brought it down intimate and basically did a special in his living room. So we actually recreated and built the living room on a sound stage, brought in an audience, everybody masked up. So it was a challenging experience because we had to get this city to sign off and everybody signed off. So, but it came out really well. We also made a pivot, right at the beginning of COVID and launched our animated division. So we have an animated special that will be coming out on Roku in November. And then I just wrapped, which just aired on Peacock Network and NBC, is Kevin Hart's stand-up, his talk show, Heart to Heart. And we did an Olympic commentary special on Peacock with Kevin and Snoop that kind of went viral. So those are the big ones that we did during the pandemic.
That's incredible. Mary?
So we felt really lucky to be busy during the pandemic. We shot, our first movie was a rom-com for Netflix up in Canada, and we started shooting that sort of in the middle of the pandemic. So there was no vaccine, none of that was going on. So that was a very interesting process. And then we did another show at the time in Vancouver. We did Turner and Hooch, and we did that for Disney Plus. So we had those going at the same time, but it was interesting because we couldn't cross sets, with all of the COVID rules. So we did those at the same exact time there. And then we did another movie recently in Louisiana, and that was post-vaccine. So that was a totally different experience. There was a lot that was better and a lot that made it more challenging, which I'm sure we'll get into later on in this discussion. So we did that. And then we're in prep right now on True Lies for CBS. We're doing that in Louisiana. We're also shooting another movie for Netflix called Uglies. And that's where I am now in Atlanta, getting ready to start that, and both begin in October. So I realized I should have launched an animated division. I missed the boat on that. Jeff and Brenda knew what they were up to, and I completely dropped the ball. So that will be my next endeavor.
Mary, I don't think you've dropped the ball at all. I think there's always opportunity. And
you, Brenda.
You are always wanting to collaborate.
I'm fully the slacker here, but we'll get into that later. Mike, what have you guys have been busy.
We've been busy. We're going to start an animation division right after this with Mary. So that's the next step here, which we're excited about. At the beginning of the pandemic, we felt really fortunate that we didn't have anything in production when we first shut down. We actually wrapped a movie here in LA for A24 on March 12th. So if you remember, the sort of 13th was when everything really shut down. We also had Extraction in the can and awaiting release, and we had finished Joe and Anthony's movie Cherry. So initially, we didn't think we were going to have to deal with a lot of this COVID stuff, that we'd focus on post and release our movies and probably not be in production. But given that it's dragged, we've had to make some stuff despite these circumstances. So, Extraction came out. Cherry we ultimately sold to Apple, and it was released there this past fall. The Daniels movie that we did for A24 is in the can and waiting, and just looking for the theatrical landscape to clean up and be a little bit more clear, particularly in that specialty market. In the meantime, we made another movie that Joe and Anthony directed called The Gray Man that we made for Netflix. We shot that here predominantly in Los Angeles, but some part overseas in Europe as well. We're, I think, on day 112 or 13 of production of a TV show for Amazon called Citadel, starring Priyanka Chopra and Richard Madden. And we're starting, hopefully, or we are starting Extraction 2 in right around the beginning of December, which has been a bit delayed for a variety of reasons related to COVID. So, we had hoped to sort of dodge COVID productions, but this has gone on so long that we ended up, working in spite of all that.
Van, why don't you go now, and then we're saving you for last, Duncan, because obviously you had a very unique role during this time.
Wow, I feel like a bit of a failure, but we did about 3 or 4 docs. We were able to do those in big cities with a lot of distance. We did a bunch of weekly series, a lot of them with musicians, and oddly enough, we were really prolific with podcasts because we could do everything remotely. literally finished a movie 10 days ago in Chicago. And on the last day, someone tested positive for COVID, the very last day. And the good thing was it was in Zone B. So it was someone in the accounting department. So after a 3-hour delay, we just went till 4 or 5 a.m. and finished the movie. So anyway, not as productive. I didn't start new divisions. I closed the London office, but besides that, it was all good. Oh, and I drew a lot. I drew some animations too, if that counts. Sorry.
That definitely counts. That totally counts. All right. Well, I really quickly, I am such a slacker compared to everybody on this incredible panel. I finished up Mrs. America. We were still in the middle of scoring in post when we shut down, and I had just wrapped shooting Respect. So that entire process was in post, and you know, we wrapped around right after Valentine's Day of 2020. So right on the edge. We had just gotten back. There wasn't even a director's cut or even an editor's assembly. And so again, that was an entire kind of borrowing some of the things we learned that I learned from post scoring and mixing in isolation. We kind of brought over, and then I produced the Academy Awards in 9 countries live in the middle of the pandemic, and we constantly were on the verge of getting shut down. Even up to the Saturday night before the show, we didn't know if the Department of Health was going to let us proceed with the show. So that was interesting, but that leads me to Duncan, who obviously worked very closely. I also have the distinction in this time of COVID of being one of the producers of Contagion, which led me to have a huge amount of epidemiologist friends that came in handy during this time period. So Duncan, I just wanted you to talk a little bit about your interaction, particularly with the DGA, because I think that SAG really protected the entire industry by ensuring that that AMPUS would adopt the DGA safe way forward that Stephen and our Contagion team really put together for the industry. And just to note, up until Delta, there was a less than 1% infection rate, I think, in our industry, which was one of the best industries, you know, certainly in the United States. So I think we all have a lot to be proud of, but you guys were the muscle to make it happen.
Well, thanks, Stacey, for that. First of all, I just want to say it's so great to hear from all of you, like how much work you all put in to keep the industry going. And I know the kind of creativity and ingenuity that the entire, you know, production community had to bring to bear to make, you know, to make the industry, to enable the industry to return to work. And, you know, that was our first priority from the moment of the shutdown, was to find a way for our members and everybody in the industry to get back to work in a safe manner. And so, you know, that started out with a few different pieces, but ultimately, I completely agree with you. The partnership with the DGA as well as IATSE, the Teamsters and Basic Crafts, it's unprecedented. I mean, all of us work together all the time, you know, and we obviously have close relationships, but it's not the ordinary course of business for those different unions to all you know, bargain together or to come up with just one thing. But I think we all figured out, and the DGA leadership certainly was essential to that. Steven Soderbergh was personally involved, which was great, because, you know, his knowledge from, you know, the work done to do Contagion was obvious, and his passion for it as well. But there were a number of people who really fought hard to make sure that we could present a single clear set of guidance to the industry. And I think, I mean, I'm guessing probably all of you would agree, you know, if this would have been handled by each of the unions coming up with their own set of safety protocols that were all, you know, somewhat similar, but all kind of different, the chaos that would have resulted would have been almost impossible to navigate effectively. So I think we realized very early on that you know, doing this together was key. And I also want to say, you know, this wasn't bargaining as usual either. When we sat down with the AMPTP to talk through the return to work agreement, yes, it took a long time. Yes, there were a number of issues that we didn't see eye to eye on at the beginning. But I do have to acknowledge that you know, the studios, the networks, the streamers, producers in general really, I think, came to the process with the same kind of focus we did, which is how do we keep people safe? How do we stop productions from shutting down again once they start? How do we make it so the industry can survive and hopefully thrive? I do want to just say two other things. One being, I want to specifically acknowledge the PGA. We worked very closely with them. They don't bargain with the AMPTP in the same way that we do, but they were with us. I met with them usually once a week for most of the first part of the pandemic so that we could all be on the same page together. And I know independent producers in particular have been really, really hard hit because of the insurance problems and how that affects financing. And so I just want to really acknowledge that that's been a pain point, I think, for a lot of people in the industry, both our members who work often in independent productions and independent producers themselves. So I think that's an area we're still trying to focus on and figure out how we can help the independent production community get back to where they need to be.
That was actually going to be my follow-up question to you, because I was on the PGA COVID safety panel, and obviously I know how often Lori and Susan were meeting with you guys, and we talked a lot about, and I think, Brenda, this is something interesting for you because you guys do finance things in so many different areas. It's one thing for Netflix or Apple to kind of eat a 10% overage. But for a company that finances things at all different levels, you guys were so busy. How did it affect you?
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting, of course, especially the insurance on a per project basis. And we to date are self-financed, so we don't have any corporate backers. So definitely did impact us, and also made us have to think in a very innovative and creative way in adapting, and obviously safety first and foremost, and also thinking about things in a very different way, just in terms of how did it impact every crew member, how does impact every aspect of talent above the line as well, and also thinking about it in a way that there was a department that was created amidst the pandemic. We now have COVID health and safety department, which we never had before. So it has, definitely, as an indie filmmaker with one foot, Braun Media Corporation, alongside my husband, who also founded the company, we have one foot in the indie space with, the filmmaker first approach. And then also we have our multiple studio partnerships. We have to really think about, COVID and all the extra expenses that affect all of these different projects by way of the budgets.
Hey, Van, why don't you drive for a little while?
Well, I'm going to try to be more positive. Part of the problem for our company is we had a bunch of productions in Canada at the time, a horror series with Sam Raimi, and we couldn't get actors. It was episodic. We couldn't get actors to go quarantine for a couple of weeks, and it was sort of brutal. And ultimately, the series didn't happen, at least season 2. But tell me, the thing I noticed with my team was just the access to writers and talent and buyers. Nobody could have an excuse, I can't see you on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, right? Because the traffic sucks. And how do you think that it got better in a way?
Yeah, I would agree. Look, I mean, obviously it got better when we were driving to the Valley for a 5 o'clock pitch on a Friday or something like that. But so that's good. And I do think that there's been a ton of development. There's a lot of available material, a lot of writers who maybe haven't had that opportunity to do some spec work, had a moment at home and a pause to do that. We've also been able to really focus and concentrate on our own development. So there's definitely been some positives in terms of that. But like you, I think, we had some production challenges. We certainly had a lot of quarantine issues in different locations and things. We were shooting the Amazon show in London, and I spent 5 days as the only guest at a hotel in London, sort of wandering around. So everybody's got those kind of things. Anthony, when we were shooting, we were scouting Gray Man in Prague. Anthony Russo's driver tested positive, so he had to spend 2 weeks in a hotel in Prague by himself. So I guess the positive there was Anthony, who's usually super busy, was pretty available to all of us from his Prague hotel room to dig in on some development work.
Cool,
So
we'll do that.
yeah, so there were some nice pauses, I guess, that gave us an opportunity to be maybe a little bit more thoughtful and in depth on some things that might otherwise just get lost in the shuffle of production.
I think it's also true for performers. It's a mixed bag, right? Because there's been a lot more virtual, like a lot of auditioning was done really exclusively virtually. The rise of self-tape auditions has been, a plus and a minus. On the one hand, it's, perhaps allowed people to have more access to opportunities to be considered. On the other hand, there's a lot of problems associated with self-tapes that we're trying to work through now in terms of how they can be done in a way that's respectful of performers and that doesn't expect them to, be their own home-based producer to produce, high quality self-tape auditions or have readers available or things like that. So there's there's been a lot of changes, and some of them have been real positive, and others do have some unintended consequences on the negative side that I think we all have to work through.
The good thing about self-produced stuff, it all looked like crap, so I think it was good for us producers.
Good to know.
Sorry, Mary.
No, that's okay. I was going to say one area that it really didn't hit me how much of a change it was the testing process. I don't know if everybody else has been doing these virtual tests as opposed to a theatrical test. Was the only way for us to test our movies and our TV shows. And all of us have sat in the theater where you try to feel the room, and this joke might have worked, that joke didn't work, and you kind of listen to people after the test and you eavesdrop in the bathroom, and you sort of try to cull whatever additional information you can get from the cards that they fill out. We've been testing them virtually through Screen Engine, and you're staring at 200 boxes like this, and you're watching people, certainly from a streaming standpoint, how they're consuming content in their homes, whether it's literally people in their beds, they're on their couch, their kids are running around. And it's so interesting how you can see the moment that everybody gets on their phone or people don't leave or they're maintaining contact. You can see exactly what jokes are landing when people leave the room. It was a completely different experience, some positives and negatives, but that was one big change that I noticed. Was that?
I have to say we did it both ways. We did a bunch of virtual ones with Screen Engine before we were able to get into a theater to test Respect. And I found it interesting, but creepy. I also think if you're planning to have a theatrical release, it doesn't give you quite all the information that you need. It gives you the information about somebody who's going to watch something multitasking.
100%.
But it doesn't give you we had I felt like it was a huge difference when we finally were in a theater. What I did think was interesting was I didn't feel comfortable flying back east for the first test when the theaters in New Jersey opened. And they set up night vision cameras, and I watched at home 4 screens. One was on the whole audience, one was on the screen, and then there were other closer views of the audience. I mean, and so close that I, could watch our studio executive eating popcorn. So, which was creepy in a different way, but it was, you're not in somebody's living room. You're in the theater.
It's very
strange. Yeah, I think they're all useful tools, and it was interesting for me at least to look at apples to oranges versus just look at the at home Screen Engine and then the in theater Recruit.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you brought 1 million people together in a soundstage at the height of before vaccination. It's amazing. Was there anything positive about that experience?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, it was the prep going into it. So what happens is the normal process for Kevin when he's doing his stand-up special is we go on tour for a year and year and a half. He does 100 shows, so he perfects the show before we actually shoot the feature special. So obviously we couldn't go on tour. So what we had to do is we rented a rooftop open air restaurant in Hollywood on top of one of the hotels. So it was a restaurant no roof open air, held about 25 people. So we ended up doing 75 shows there over about 30 to 40 days. We were just going like every day.
I wish I knew you then. I definitely would have been all in for that.
Yeah, I mean, it was an intimate audience and it was open air. But the interesting is that this was pre-testing, but it just, I think, you know, the thing is, as much as I do like the Zoom and I think it's been productive, the people want to get together. People need to get together, especially when it comes to comedy. They want to be in an audience, be with people. But that's how we were able to set up us going to the soundstage. That we were literally we booked this thing straight for 45 days and we did a show at 1 to 2 shows every day on this rooftop for 20, 25 people. So by the time we got to the production, we kind of had it perfected. The city had came out, and you know, because you know we had to get it okay from the city because there was no vaccinations. But even in our shooting, we only had 25 people in the audience. But the challenge there is everybody had on masks, so the laughs were muffled. You know what I mean? So you know Kevin trying to get the vibe of the audience. It was a tough shoot. A challenge in terms of shooting stand-up, but we were able to pull off and it came out well. But it was a challenge, but there was a lot. I learned a lot, and we basically just adapted Netflix's COVID testing protocols, even to the point I use it as doctor now for all of our other productions, the same doctor they gave us, because they gave us all these mandates and protocols. So we just basically literally adapted their protocols as well as some of their personnel for our productions now.
I guess I have to ask, you know, my background in film is mostly kind of indie films, you know, Hustle and Flow, Napoleon Dynamite, smaller in size. And all of the scripts that were a bit more seismic with 30, 50 cast members, we kind of put to the side. And for you folks who do more seismic, bigger productions, did they get to the back of the pile? Are they back in the front of the pile? What's your thinking about it now?
You know, for us, we made our biggest movie we've made to date as a company. I mean, we started in March of 21, so we were protocols were pretty well established at that point, and we delayed the movie a few times because we were worried about various surges and issues related to it. And we dealt with a lot of shutdown issues and positives and things. You know, ultimately. It's still very low rate, but you know, if you lose, there's one positive in your stunt team, that's a huge, you know, echo across the whole production. But we were lucky that we had supportive partners who wanted the movie. In the case of The Gray Man at Netflix and Citadel at Amazon, which are really the two biggest productions we've done. I think in both cases that was the biggest, you know, from a budget standpoint, production that the Netflix had undertaken at that time. And with the exception of Lord of the Rings, I think Citadel is certainly in the running for biggest Amazon has ever done. So they were both delayed, but ultimately the partners needed product. It's no secret that streamers need product during this time. And so they were willing to incur some extra costs and were incredibly supportive. And you know, the productions were really responsive. And I think, as I said, we were lucky that we didn't start anything into a year into this. So there was a pretty good rhythm. Testing was widely available. Most folks on the productions had worked already, so they were comfortable with the masks and the other restrictions. There was good tracing. People were really responsible about it. So it felt like it was just, one more thing a production had to contend with, but not overwhelming the productions at that point by any means.
Those are good partners to have. How about you, Stacy? You still going to do some big fat productions in the near?
You know, I hope so. But like you, Van, I sort of go between the two different levels, you know, smaller and bigger. It's just been a lot of development. You know, I really, aside from finishing the film, which was extremely challenging for a first-time director to never be in the cutting room with her, first-time feature director, never be in the cutting room with her editor. Definitely not easy. And also, you know, we ended up coming out, MGM thought they made a safe bet at the point in the pandemic that they released us, and we got hit with Delta with a movie that, you know, is primarily aimed at women over 25. So we saw a lot of hesitancy to go back to the theater in that demographic. And it had a huge impact. And we had to kind of pivot to a PVOD model much faster than we would have, because the movie's one of the highest grossing films I've ever worked on. And it's an audience film, but we saw millions of dollars of group sales get pulled because people were just too scared at that moment in the middle of Delta to go back into our audience, to go back into the theater. You know, I think if you're making Free Guy or, you know, something that really is men under 25 or under 25 to begin with, I think, you know, where people are feeling pretty confident. But right when Delta hit, I think it was another tricky time for theatrical. And look, I obviously, you know, when Soderbergh and Jesse asked me to do the Oscars with them, I said yes, because I must have been insane, or I can't say no to anything that Steven asks me to ever do. So the challenges were kind of unfathomable because of people coming from so many different countries. And Jeff, I'm sure you can relate to this, the amount of restrictions that the Department of Health put on you. You weren't allowed to sing in the room. We had all kinds of things planned that we just weren't allowed to do, because every day you would get a different set of, you know, it was right up to the last minute until they said, yes, Regina King didn't have to wear a mask for the opening walk. I mean, that was at, I think, 8 o'clock at night on Saturday. So, you know, I also think that one of the great things is we were all at home when the tragedy in Minnesota happened. And I honestly think that if people weren't home for what happened, for George Floyd's murder, and also for the trial, there wouldn't be real change. People would have been busy, but I think that the eyes of the entire country were watching, and the eyes of the whole world, and they couldn't turn away. And I think that is really resulting in more than lip service for different voices to be present in storytelling. So I do think that there are positives that have come out of our time at home, and innovations. You know, I think we can do ADR in a different remote way. There are so many actors that I worked with that were in like a linen closet or something like that, finishing their ADR. Chris Bowers, you know, figured out how to score at home and work with the musicians, and, you know, deal with and do the sessions over, you know, different programs that were developed. So I think there's definitely innovation. And for me, it was great meeting writers and filmmakers from, you know, all over the world that I would have thought I needed to take that UK trip or a New York trip or any of those things. It broadens now that storytelling is global. But my final point about the Oscars is that I do believe that spending 2 hours singularly focused on something is a worthy and important thing for human beings. So I am really invested in the continuation of the theatrical experience and group gathering in the same way people needed it for comedy or for music. I think sitting in the dark with 400 strangers that don't necessarily share your worldview and finding common ground is important for us as a culture. So that's, you know, I hope we fight for it, and it's really why I wanted to work on the Oscars. And we'll never do it again.
Nothing like live TV. I guess my last question I would ask related to that, to the group is, you know, based on the time we're living in, you can produce stuff essentially with zero financial risk, right? You know, and sell it directly to streamers. It limits your upside. But I don't know, how do you all feel about the fact that you may not get a theatrical release for your movie? You may not, you know, there may not be, Stacey was talking about this sort of gestation period that happens in theaters where an independent movie can grow over time. It just lives on a streamer amongst many other projects.
One of the things that we really honed in on during the pandemic, my husband and I and our leadership group, our executives within Braun Media Corporation, is looking at also additional revenue streams. So we have, had theatrical releases, we've had, multiple projects on different streaming services, but really looking at some of the ancillary. As I mentioned before, just in terms of Braun Digital and, having that animated premium series, is what can we do that is beyond just the content itself? So there's gaming, there's merch, there's licensing, there's music, there's all these different opportunities. You also see much more of these virtual sort of immersive events as well occurring. So you can have everybody from all over the world partaking in something that is cool and has to do with your original IP. So I think it's just really important to have, the additional revenue streams, but also really supporting and harboring individuals that have not been represented before. We've also been supporting some Black and Brown content creators socially so that they can, garner some relationships, get some visibility, and then get their projects, on a platform, or get an opportunity to work and collaborate with some, prolific filmmakers. It's just, for us at Braun right now, it's just really important for us to see and expand the lifespan of our content rather than just the content itself.
You are wonderfully left and right brained. I just want to say that. Those are like cohesive, cogent thoughts. Well done. But I don't, Mary, what are you and McGee thinking about the theatrical experience?
Yeah, Stacy put it perfectly. I think everybody wants to preserve that. It's why I'm certainly in the movie business, where those experiences growing up from a child to high school through college and whatnot. And obviously the sands has shifted. That streaming has come in, and we've been really happy. We have, our deal is at Netflix, and a lot of the things we've gone on to, again, our series was Disney Plus. The 3 movies we did were Netflix. We're doing one for them now. We've really enjoyed it. There's something to be said about putting something out into the world and having people I haven't talked to in decades and people around the world internationally getting a hold of your email address, which is good and bad, but getting all of these fan emails from movies that wouldn't have gone necessarily theatrical, that were small, but really touching people. And that's been so cool for us. And we had a movie come out during the pandemic that was a feel-good rom-com holiday movie. It was called Holiday, and it broke all kinds of records at Netflix. And that was, again, exciting for us because we tend to make commercial content. We don't shy away from it. We like pop culture, and we realized during the pandemic, a lot of people wanted those types of movies. So for us, we've had a great time with the streaming experience. That's not to say we wouldn't be very sad if theatrical went away. So I think we're all trying to figure out a way. How do we keep it going? I think it does need to shift. We have to be able to get people back in theaters with or without COVID. How do we keep those places in business?
Yeah, I think, look, I'm not mad that there's more people to buy stuff, and also it's been a great development to watch through streaming things like documentaries grow, that audiences are now as comfortable watching Money Heist or the French version of Call My Agent or any other, there's a billion Spanish shows that my kids watch. I think that that's fantastic that, we are truly, the United States is catching up to become more global. There's more opportunities for people to watch stuff, I just don't want to see that go also.
Obviously, my partners have had a lot of success theatrically coming off the Marvel stuff. And so, our next film will be theatrical. Gray Man we made for Netflix, and we're making a film for Electric State in March, for Universal called Electric State in March. And we feel that type of movie, the big tentpole movie, is still going to warrant the theatrical experience. That audience will still want the theatrical experience. And we're seeing in Shang-Chi proof that thesis is true. So, creatively, we certainly still prioritize it. From a business perspective, we still prioritize it. But we also, to your guys' point, have this opportunity to offset some of the risk associated with those buy a more reliable revenue stream in streaming, and also to up our output, because I think Mary's hitting on it. There was a lot of movies that just weren't getting made because the theatrical was declining and studios were making 10, 12, 14, whatever it was, movies, down from the 40 or 50 movies that they were making at their peak. And so to find streaming as an opportunity for that, and I think Extraction to us is a really great example of that, which is a mid-priced action movie, conventional action movie, not CG-driven action movie with a big star. Might not have gotten made if there was only a theatrical avenue towards it, but it got made and it was a big success at Netflix. And so we're finding that both from a business and a creative standpoint, it's great to have, one foot in each category. And to your point, Stacey, there's also these great opportunities. The show we're doing for Amazon, couldn't have existed 5 years ago. It's an English mothership show, starring Priyanka and Richard Madden. And then there's as much as 5 local language spin-offs in different territories around the world. So as producers, the challenge of that is enormous and exciting and interesting. And had there not been this global service, there wouldn't have been an opportunity to make something like that. So there's all this great opportunity, but at least for us, we really believe and remain committed to making big movies for theatrical as well.
Yeah, I think from the performer. Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say from the performer perspective. I mean, obviously, the rise of streamers has enabled the creation of a lot of jobs for performers, and that is a good thing. Clearly, our members also very much are committed to the theatrical model. They want to see movies released in theaters. We are committed to that. I think other unions in the creator space are committed to that too, and so we're eager to help the industry find that path that's going to make sure that the theatrical exhibition remains a really vital part of the overall industry, recognizing that you can't fight technology and that streaming is here and that there's a lot of great things about it. And so I think this is an area where producers and talent have a lot in common and very much want to see, I think Mary said it earlier, very much want to see a really vibrant, vital theatrical exhibition, part of the industry existing going forward.
Jeff, by the way, do you want to talk about the direct-to-consumer business during this time in culture? Gunpowder and Sky has a bunch of channels around sci-fi and horror and unscripted with Dust and Alter and Cut, and our traffic is quadrupled. The engagement time is about 100 minutes a session, where people watch TV for about 4 minutes. It's really exploded. I don't know what you've seen.
Yeah, actually, as you said that, that's the part of our business that really grew. Is our, we have an AVOD channel. We're actually launching more channels, but we're getting 100+ minutes average on a viewing session, which is incredible numbers. But our streaming grew, actually tripled from 2020 to. We've already surpassed in the first 6 months what we did in 2020. So that the viewership is just it's phenomenal. I think we had, like in 2020, we had 2 billion viewing minutes, and we're already up over 3 billion as of July. So you can just see the numbers. Just people are going to these channels. But one of the things, I mean, obviously this is probably a whole different subject, but is one of the things that we saw early on is that when we think about the subscription streamers, the Disney Pluses and the Netflix, is that the average consumer is only going to be able to subscribe to, right now they said 3.5, but I think it's up to, people have 5 subscriptions, even if you include a music subscription. So what we've seen over the last 18 months is on the AVOD platform, just phenomenal growth on AVOD, but it's really, what I say, it's no different from traditional TV. When you had cable and you subscribe to HBO and you have free TV, it's just the same thing. It just happens to be over the top. But you are seeing like huge growth in this area, which changes the ancillary model, even for theatrical. So now when you're thinking about theatrical, because back, I come from the physical media side of things, DVD. The DVD is not there. So when especially if you're independent, if you're thinking about theatrical, then you have to think about what is your ancillary what do those windows look like? You know, is it a SVOD, then is it a AVOD, is it transaction? So the answering models are continuing to change, and literally diversify the different revenue opportunities.
I think that's right. Us fat cat coastal people can't forget that free is still meaningful. People will watch content with commercials for free.
Yeah.
Terrestrial radio still has a lot of people who listen to it. So there you go. What do you guys, did you guys see the crazy Anthony Hopkins NFT movie thing yesterday? That they're selling an NFT feature film with Anthony Hopkins for, I think they're bidding on 10,000 slots to buy it, I think.
So it's like a one-off movie that's an NFT, and then it's in an auction.
And they're selling like a group NFT. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Well, I
think it sounds super cool.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it sounds like almost like a Kickstarter thing or something, you know?
Yeah, which been there, did that. That was fun. Nobody knew how to value it, but you know, I think we raised like over $3 million on the internet to make a movie with Zach Braff, and all the backers were really happy too. But it was experimental, so I hope it goes well for Sir Anthony.
Well, because that was complicated. You had to figure out how to pay your backers once you sold the movie, you mean?
No, it wasn't complicated for that reason. It was complicated because the press really went after us for raising money from people. Our backers were thrilled. They had set visits, they had special screenings, they got t-shirts, they had the best time. They shared our trailer so much that it had as many streams as like a giant movie that opened that weekend when they first dropped the trailer. It was more like the how dare we do that came really from the press and not at all from fans. So that was interesting. But that's for another panel discussion. I think we're out of time. You guys are incredible. I'm awed by everything that all of you have done, because clearly I just spent too much time in the corner of my living room and should have started the many divisions. And it's been great hanging out with all of you guys and getting to know everyone. I'm fans of everyone here. So
thanks for having us.
Thank you guys.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.